Chapter 1661. Our Alliance. Does the Revolutionary Army know the news? Staring at Najenda and Isdeth's face, Dustless said without thinking. Isdeth is the big enemy of the Revolutionary Army, Najenda. If we form an alliance rashly, there may be a big problem. Don't worry about it for the time being. I will take full responsibility for the problem. Najenda replied frankly, intending to take all the blame. Isdeth was the strongest sadist general of the empire. The Revolutionary Army was killed by her. The Revolutionary Army also hated Isdeth. Seeing the victory in hand, the Revolutionary Army would never join forces with such a sinner. As you like. Dustless couldn't say much. After all, this was the choice of the boss, Najenda. Although he felt that this behavior was digging a hole for himself, Dustless still chose to respect her will. At most, he would help Najenda once at a critical moment. Putong. At this moment, an unexpected figure suddenly fell to the ground and fainted with a very haggard look. Kurom. Chitong hurriedly ran to Kurom's side and held her tightly in his arms. He raised his voice several times and stared at Kurom, trying not to let go of every inch of her skin, for fear that he would miss a wound. Her body has been hollowed out. Looking down at Kurom, who fell in Akhame's arms, Dustless sighed with regret. After a series of battles before, I am afraid that she will die soon. Kurom. This sentence was like thunder for Akhame. She was stunned instantly. Her jade hand trembled and stroked Kurom's cheek. Her throat was choked up. Fate is really cruel. Witnessing such a scene, everyone's faces were bleak, and there was a feeling of sadness. Witnessing the departure of their companions, sometimes, they couldn't help but think about their own future. Especially Akhame's desperate eyes were even more unforgettable. Do you need to be so sad? Although I said that she will die soon, I didn't say that she can't be saved. It was very discordant, but it made Akhame happy. Can you really do it? Dustless. Chitong grabbed Dustless excitedly. He couldn't help but grab Dustless's hands and place them on his chest. Feeling the scorching heat, Chitong's despairing heart was ignited once again. Cough cough. Dustless's face stiffened slightly, and he hurriedly withdrew his hands from Chitong's grasp. She had placed them in the wrong position, and they were too close. Even though they were separated by clothes, Dustless could still feel their delicate touch. It wasn't Dustless's fault, but Chitong's career line was too majestic. It's just a small matter. If it's Tatsumi, I can't save him. If it's your sister, even if her head is separated, I will make her come back to life. Does this bastard know how to speak properly? Why does he have to drag me into this every time? Tatsumi, who was hiding in the dark, was so angry that he stomped his feet. Every time he was so miserable. Even if he didn't offend Dustless, he was still inexplicably tricked by this guy. Could it be that this guy is omnipotent? Glancing at Dustless with a complicated look, Isdeth looked lonely. She used to have the hope of surpassing Dustless. Now after losing the power of Taigu, her confidence was also annihilated, and now it was gone with the wind. She used to fantasize about keeping Dustless as a pet, but now it seemed that there was no chance in this life. In the base of the night attack, Najenda and Isdeth had something to talk about. Dustless, Chitong, and her sister were closed in a special room with only one bed. The person lying on the operating table was Kurom. Crack! Dustless's sudden move made Chitong very nervous. She saw that Chitong broke Kurom's clothes, revealing her petite body. Damn Empire! Chitong clenched her fists tightly. At first, she thought that Wuchen was going to take advantage of her. It was not until she lifted her clothes that she realized that Chitong's abdomen was pitch black, like a rotten corpse. This was the sequelae of long-term injection of drugs. Yin-Yang release is a very magical ninjutsu. It not only has amazing attack power, but also can create something out of nothing and create a new organ. Even if Kurom's internal organs collapse, and some parts of her body are close to rot, as long as you help her create a new body, she can recover safely. Dustless explained while treating Kurom's overwhelmed body. Especially the abdomen was the most obvious place. The dark, rotten, and terrible epidermis was brand new and condensed into the bright skin. Can human beings and taiga do this kind of thing? Chitong's heart was pounding. She witnessed Haitong's gradually recovering, and her cheeks were rosy. She had a blind admiration for Wu Chen. The thin young man in front of her could be said to be an omnipotent existence. There was nothing that he couldn't think of, but nothing he couldn't do. I will wipe your sweat for you. Such an ability must be very energy-consuming. Haitong carefully wiped the sweat for Dustless. Looking at the face close at hand, her heart trembled inexplicably. Noticing that Haitong was staring at him without blinking, Dustless patted her on the shoulder and explained to himself. After so many years, I have already reached the level of controlling and using yin-yang release. It doesn't consume energy. At the same time, Kurome, who was in a coma, slowly opened her eyes and found the most shocking scene in her life. Haitong's face was close to Dustless's cheek. Her eyes were empty as if she was possessed by a devil. No one knew what she was thinking. Even because they were too close to each other, they could feel the heat of each other's breath. Chapter 1662. The two looked around, and the atmosphere fell into an unprecedented strange silence. Is it possible that Scarlet Pupil is fascinated by my aggressiveness? On the surface, he was indifferent, but Dustless was happy in his heart, and he couldn't help but daydream. In the original work, Tatsumi could fool Scarlet Pupil. Dustless did not think that he was worse than Tatsumi. Whether it was strength, charm, or other aspects, Dustless thought that he was better than Tatsumi. Which was more popular, a hero or a bear? There was no doubt that it was the former, and Dustless belonged to the former. Although Tatsumi was good, compared with Dustless, he could only be a bear. At this time, I should take Scarlet Pupil into my arms, and then hee-hee. Dustless raised a slanted smile at the corner of his mouth, and his hand could not help but reach out to Scarlet Pupil's waist. Boom boom boom. Before Dustless completely made a move, the earth-shattering sound of the cannon resounded throughout the imperial capital. Kurome also recovered from her sluggishness, and realized that Dustless was so close to her. Her pretty face turned red, and she instantly retracted her neck. Which blind bastard is it that's spouting nonsense? Dustless turned around, and the roaring sound landed beside him. If Dustless didn't dodge quickly, he was afraid that he would eat a mouthful of soil. At the same time, the new base of the night raid was subjected to large-scale artillery bombardment. Boom boom boom. The earth-shattering roar of the cannons lasted for more than 10 minutes before it stopped. The base of the night raid had turned into a pile of rubble. Fortunately, everyone had hidden in the first place, so there were no major problems and they had escaped this fatal attack. Who the hell attacked us? Looking at the ruins of the scorched earth, Boss Najenda was furious. She was discussing the secret plan to attack the imperial capital with this death. Who knew that the artillery bombardment came from the sky? There is no doubt that this is definitely not the Empire. Its death was decisive and sure. She had been fighting for a long time, and was very familiar with artillery. Then there is only one possibility. These people who ambushed us. Maybe everyone is very surprised, but it seems that there is only one possibility. The people who ambushed us are the Revolutionary Army. Dustless said something shocking. Impossible. Not only the boss Najenda, but also the other members were full of doubts. They all denied Dustless's ridiculous idea. After all, they belonged to the Revolutionary Army. How could their own people attack their own people? However, Istetha's eyes had a strange luster. After hearing Dustless's answer, she did not rush to deny it like others. She knew that Dustless was not the kind of person who spoke without thinking. After thinking carefully for a while, she decisively stood on the side of Dustless and nodded. Although I don't want to admit it, so far, only the Revolutionary Army can gather so many troops. The imperial capital is now going to collapse, and everyone is in danger. Not to mention that there is no such elite force. Even if there is, Minister Onesta will definitely use it to protect the imperial capital. Istetha's analysis was orderly, and what she said was reasonable. Everyone intended to refute, but there was no corresponding plan. If the imperial capital couldn't do it, only the most powerful revolutionary army could do it. Boom boom boom. And the next hysterical roar spread through the void, and fell into the ears of all the members of the night raid. Kill these damn traitors, they even colluded with this death behind the Revolutionary Army. They deserve to be killed. Kill all the traitors, kill the men, kill the women. Ha ha ha. The new country doesn't need garbage like the night raid. Let's kill them together. All kinds of angry voices came out from the mouths of the Black Shadows. Najenda and other members of the night raid were shocked. They didn't expect the well-trained Revolutionary Army to be so disgusting at the moment. They were no different from the garbage of the Empire. You don't have to be surprised, I have told you before. With the passage of time, no matter what material it is, it will slowly decay and age. It can't escape the carving of time. The Empire is no exception, and the rising Revolutionary Army is no exception. Fighting with each other is the nature of human beings. It will never perish. Unless all the human beings in the world can be destroyed. Dustless said. His tone was particularly persuasive. It was like the beginning of the Empire. It was also honest, but with the passage of time, it was also old and dirty. Damn it. Are we just going to wait helplessly for death? I am not reconciled. Under everyone's surprised gaze, mine decisively raised her taigu. Why don't you give me a chance to explain? Do you have to fight with me? Najenda looked sad. She did not expect the Revolutionary Army to hate his death so much. No, don't you understand? This is not the reason of his death. Dustless noticed that Lubbock and Tatsumi stared at his death with a slightly disgusted look, and explained the reason in one sentence. Our night raid is the dark side of the Revolutionary Army. All the evil things are done by us, so this group of guys wants to kill us, and then push the blame to the night raid. When the voice fell, the faces of the members of the night raid all changed. They were desperate to the Revolutionary Army in an instant. They paid for the revolution wholeheartedly. They did not expect that this group of benevolent Revolutionary Army was so vicious at the moment. They treated the night raid as a chess piece. Perhaps the basic purpose was as Dustless said, they used his death as an excuse to wipe out the night raid. All the darkness of the new country was the scapegoat of the night raid, and the Revolutionary Army could wash themselves clean. By the way, everyone seems to have a huge loophole that has been selectively forgotten. The new base of the night raid was exposed. Don't you think it's strange? Chapter 1663. Why was the base exposed? All the members were stunned. Then they nodded as if they woke up from a dream. Due to the sudden betrayal of the Revolutionary Army, everyone was tangled in the issue of the Revolutionary Army for a while, and ignored this crucial issue. The previous night raid was attacked by Isdeath, and the original base was reduced to scorched ruins. Now the new base was changed. The boss Najenda did not rush to inform the Revolutionary Army. Then the question came, how did the Revolutionary Army know? There is a traitor among us. Stretching, Dustless told the amazing truth, and at the same time, his eyes swept across the faces of the members of the night raid, and a special figure came into view. Tatsumi. At this moment of depression, Dustless suddenly called out Tatsumi's name. What's with your eyes? What do you want to express? Do you suspect that I am the traitor? Tatsumi was angry and yelled at Dustless. Please pay attention to your wording, remember to have evidence, otherwise it is just false accusation. It didn't matter what Wuchen said, but everyone looked at Tatsumi. What are you nervous about? I just called your name. I didn't seem to say that you are the traitor who betrayed us. Dustless slightly loosened his shoulders and showed a guilty expression. You are insinuating. Tatsumi had been cheated by Dustless so many times that he had a shadow in his heart. We will talk about these things later. At present, we have defeated the Revolutionary Army temporarily. The boss Najenda pinched the cigarette, but she also knew that there was a mole in the night raid at the moment. TSK, you are really decisive, Najenda. Isdeath touched her chin, and was quite surprised. She didn't expect Najenda to turn hostile. There is nothing to be surprised about. I can't take everyone's life. Najenda waved her hand, and then all the members of the night raid were dispatched this time. The only difference was that the target of the attack was no longer the decaying empire, but the Revolutionary Army. Time passed by, about an hour or so. The night raid successfully repelled the invading Revolutionary Army, and their own losses were minimal or even negligible. In the evening, Everyone rushed back to the base, looking exhausted. Being stabbed in the back by one's own people was not only physically tiring, but also a heavy blow to one's spirit. No one would be able to accept the fact that their faith had suddenly betrayed them one day, and they would even feel resentment. We are in the same boat now, Najenda. Death crossed her long white legs and sat lazily on the sofa. She held a wine glass in her hand, and gently shook the red liquid in the glass elegantly. Gulp. Then Death drank it up and praised. Not bad. The taste is very special and the taste is very mellow. I didn't expect you to have such a good wine in the night raid. Najenda, bring me a few more bottles. This smell is somewhat familiar. Smelling the remaining fragrance in the air, Dustless looked at Death, and his expression suddenly froze. Mrs. Death, the wine tastes good, but I want to know where you got it? I got it in the kitchen. I took it when I met it, but it's strange that it's only half a bottle. Death blurted out. Then she looked at Dustless in surprise, and seemed to understand something. She smiled proudly and poured the bottle into her mouth, and she did not forget to satirize. Dustless, don't even think about drinking, this is the last bit. If you want to drink, you can take my bottle and lick it. After the voice fell, Death poured all the remaining red liquid in the bottle into her mouth. You misunderstood me. Dustless heard the words and immediately said helplessly. Mrs. Death, I forgot to tell you just now, your half bottle of wine is actually what I drank yesterday, and you are so hungry, do you like my saliva so much? Poochie. Death, who was still proud, suddenly changed her face. All the red wine that she had just swallowed into her lungs was sprayed out. Her face was gloomy and gloomy. In particular, Dustless's sentence, "Do you like my saliva so much?" was particularly harsh in Death's ears. "Do you think I will believe such vulgar jokes?" Death asked with a pale face. At this moment, Scarlet Eye suddenly stood up and interrupted, and said with a red face, "Mrs. Death, Dustless is telling the truth. This wine was bought by him and me in the capital for a mission, and we were going to..." Speaking of this, Scarlet Eye was more embarrassed and said embarrassedly, "Dustless said that he was going to use it for Tatsumi, and he also put special seasoning in it." Grumble. At the same time, Death's stomach growled very cooperatively. "You win." Aware of the abnormality of her body, Death glared at Dustless and quickly ran to the bathroom. "What did you put in it?" Tatsumi asked with a chill all over his body. "It's just a few packs of laxatives." Dustless's face was full of pity. His intention was to kill Tatsumi, but who knew that the greediest Death would take it away? "Well, what do you think of the traitor inside?" Najenda clenched her hands into fists, and her tone was obviously angry and a little murderous. "Hey, boss, don't worry. I have found the evidence of the behind-the-scenes manipulator." Dustless smiled mysteriously, and the curve of his mouth was full of deep meaning. "Are you sure?" Najenda and others asked in surprise. A traitor was hiding in the dark and staring at their activities. Thinking of it, everyone had a lingering fear and uneasiness. They couldn't help but have goosebumps. This sense of oppression was far greater than the deterrence of the enemy. Only ghosts knew when the secret snake would stab them. They were not afraid of a godlike enemy, but they were afraid of a pig-like teammate. Chapter 1664. At night, the sky gradually became cold, and everyone went back to sleep one after another. In Dustless's bedroom, he was lying lazily on the quilt, his eyes were rolling, and his deep black eyes were full of cunning. Who was the undercover this time? In fact, Dustless didn't know, or it was just a coincidence. There was no suspicious person inside the night attack, and it could barely be understood as a coincidence that the Revolutionary Army discovered the night attack on the new base. It's a pity not to take advantage of such a good opportunity. Dustless smiled grimly, and his cheeks flashed a gloomy murderous look. If there was no opportunity, he could create it. Dustless could take advantage of this opportunity to kill Tatsumi and put the blame on him. What's more, Tatsumi has this motive. Dustless murmured coldly, and he made up his mind to push all the causes and consequences to Tatsumi. It was better to kill this eyesore. Creak. It was also at this time that Dustless suddenly heard the sound of the door being pushed open. and he immediately pretended to be asleep, and then he saw the hockey spread out like water ripples. It seems to be his death. Even with his eyes closed, Dustless felt who it was from the unique temperament. The closed eyes opened, and the person who appeared in the eyes was Isdeth in pajamas. No, it was too much to say that it was pajamas. Isdeth's white underwear was open, her proud cleavage was exposed, and most of her 2 huge meatballs could be seen clearly. What's the matter? You weren't seen when you came, right? Maybe I'll be gossiped about. Also, you're not retaliating against me, are you? So are you ready to be humiliated by me again? Dustless stared at Isdeth's delicate face and asked. You know the answer. Don't talk nonsense. Didn't you expect this scene? The day I begged you. I remember you said it last time. Isdeth snorted softly. Did I? Dustless pretended to widen his eyes innocently and scratched his head embarrassedly, as if to say that he didn't know anything. You're too forgetful. Isdeth sat on the quilt, staring at Dustless with her watery eyes and said, Lend me your strength, and I can help you do everything you want to do. Is that why you joined the night raid, to get close to me? Isdeth nodded and crossed her arms. Why do you think I joined the night raid? Don't tell me. Do you think I've been influenced? This kind of thinking was very naive. The Empire was not a good thing, and so was the Revolutionary Army. The winner could decide everything. Evil and justice are not important. The key is power. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He really thought that Isdeth wanted to repent. Who knew that this girl joined the Night Raid assassin organization in order to get close to him? You are right, the winner can decide everything. The key is that you are just a stray dog now. You don't even have the ability of Taigu. How can you talk about winning? It's too funny. Dustless raised his tone deliberately to attack Isdeth. That's why I came to you for help. Isdeth blinked and said with a serious expression, Give me the power to destroy them. From now on we are allies. No. Dustless shook his head quickly and sneered. Mrs. Death, do you really think others are fools? My power can give you stronger strength. But do you want to get something for nothing? Don't you think you are too ridiculous? You want to get my power without paying. There is no such cheap thing in the world. If you want to get my power, you must come up with the conditions that I am interested in. That's right. Isdeth lowered her head without saying yes or no. If you want to get other people's things, who will be fooled if you don't give bait? What's more, Dustless was not the kind of idiot who had a lot of money. After thinking for a while, under Dustless's surprised gaze, Isdeth made an amazing move. The almost transparent pajamas as thin as a cicada's wing was cut from Isdeth's delicate body. The delicate skin and the body that made people daydream were all exposed in the sight of Dustless. The body that made people commit crimes could be seen at a glance. It attracted the nerves of Dustless. Cough, cough. Dustless was slightly stunned after seeing this. His face flashed with embarrassment, and he reluctantly took back his sight. Give me power. This body is yours. You can do whatever you want. I will never resist. Finally, Isdeth approached Dustless and blew a hot breath in his ear. You can do whatever you want. I will fully cooperate with you. Since you think so clearly, then I will agree with you this deal. Staring at Isdeth's clear eyes, Dustless snapped his fingers. Then a strange fruit appeared in his hand. It was the devil fruit, and it was the ice-cold fruit of Logia. What is this? Don't tell me that it can let me regain the strength of the past. Isdeth pointed to the devil fruit with suspicion. Eat it, you will get the previous strength. No, to be exact, you will get the strength beyond the previous. Akiji's ice-cold fruit is far more powerful than the Taigu, demon god's manifestation, devil's essence. Dustless explained, staring at Isdeth and said, But there is a condition you must promise me, otherwise everything is in vain, and what I said before does not count. My body. You can take it. Isdeth said calmly. The concept of the weak being prey to the strong had already been deeply rooted. For her, the weak deserved to be dominated by the strong. Not this. Dustless stared at Isdeth angrily. She thought he was crazy. Dustless walked to Isdeth's side and said something to her in a low voice. After a while, Isdeth, who understood, had a strange expression. Are you sure you want to do this? Chapter 1665. It was no wonder that his death was so strange. Dustless's request was to join hands to kill Tatsumi. Does that kind of small character need my cooperation? His death was puzzled. She did not expect Dustless to make such a fuss. There was no need to know a small character. After all, he was just a small character. Tell me. After thinking for a while, Isdeth did not refuse in a hurry. Come closer. Dustless smiled and let Isdeth come closer. Finally, he told her his plan. After listening to it, Isdeth was immediately embarrassed. No wonder Tatsumi hates you so much. If it were me, maybe I would die with you. Isdeth rubbed her temple and looked at Dustless with a hopeless look. So what? Dustless curled his lips and did not care about Isdeth's contempt. He asked directly, So Miss Isdeth, what is your choice? I promise you. After a little hesitation, Isdeth gritted her teeth and agreed to Dustless's condition. Take it. Dustless smiled slightly, then handed the ice-cold fruit in his hand to Isdeth and said lazily, Repeat again, this is the ice-cold fruit of Logia. Its ability is far more powerful than Demon God's appearance, Devil's essence. Its ability is also as its name, it can freeze all creatures or non-matter. The scale is more powerful than Taigu, but how powerful it is depends on the host. Do you mean this fruit is called devil fruit? Isdeth's eyes were full of light. She was quite curious about this strange fruit. It was the first time to encounter such a special fruit in her life. Yes, I am the flash person who ate the flash fruit. Most of the physical attacks do not work on me. This devil fruit also has the same ability, it can be immune to most of the physical attacks, and it can grew. However, before Dustless finished speaking, Isdeth grabbed the ice-cold fruit. She was afraid that Dustless would regret, so she simply swallowed the fruit into her mouth. Fuck, aren't you afraid of choking? Dustless stared at Isdeth speechlessly. He did not expect her to act so fast. Woo woo woo. A strange sound came out of Isdeth's mouth. Although it was not clear what she was saying, the general meaning could be seen from her proud face. What if you regret it? How do you feel? Do you feel any changes in your physique? Dustless changed the topic and asked with interest. It's disgusting. Isdeth had a bitter look on her face. Her delicate face had turned into a bitter gourd color. It seemed that she had suffered a lot. You're still complaining? Glaring at Isdeth snappily, Wu Chen scolded. This is a priceless treasure, it's disgusting. Before he finished speaking, a cold light surged out of Isdeth's body. Ka ka ka. The entire room instantly turned into a world of ice and snow, and the cold aura lowered the surrounding temperature by hundreds of degrees. Not bad. Feeling the changes in her body, Isdeth was pleasantly surprised. She lost her power and regained it. Especially when she gained more power than before, she was extremely happy. Then with a slight thought, the cold air emitted from Isdeth's body calmed down. Good control. Is it because you have been playing with ice for a long time? Dustless's eyes flashed with surprise, and he smiled with satisfaction. Although it is not as good as Akiji for the time being, it should be no problem to surpass him. Who is this Akiji you are talking about? Is he also a person with this ice-cold fruit ability? Isdeth blinked and asked curiously. Yes, but to be exact, he is your predecessor, he is dead. Dustless waved and said, and immediately stared at Isdeth with aggressive eyes. I remember you just said that if I let you regain your former strength, your body will be mine, right? In that case, it would be impolite for me to decline. Staring at the fragrant Isdeth, Dustless did not hesitate to rush up. At first he thought that Isdeth would resist. Unexpectedly, this girl not only did not refuse, but also showed a different kind of wildness. She wanted to counterattack Dustless and press Dustless under her body. After a short period of absent-mindedness, Dustless naturally would not let Isdeth do as she wished, and he suppressed Isdeth strongly. The next morning, when Dustless and Isdeth opened their eyes, it was almost noon of the next day. What a shameless night. The bright sunshine sprinkled into the room. Dustless subconsciously blocked the light with his hand, and looked at the outside world through the weak gap between his 5 fingers. Is it noon? Dustless just got up and put on his clothes, but the soft and boneless arms hugged him tightly. What's the matter, is death? Staring at the delicate face, an inexplicable tiredness swept through his heart. Dustless retracted the quilt again and hugged the plump body in his arms. With his eyes closed, Dustless said casually, "Remember, you have to cooperate with me to kill Tatsumi, and push the identity of undercover to him. This is the content of the deal. I will fulfill it even if you don't say it." Isdef lay lazily on Wu Chen's body. Both of them didn't have clothes to cover their bodies, and they were naked. "I have a new plan." Isdef's eyes flashed with slyness, and she said straightforwardly, "You are too strong. I seem to be no match for you in the end, no matter how hard I try." This is true in all aspects. Isdef finally added a sentence full of deep meaning. Until now, her body was still painful, and there were obvious claw marks on her white skin. "It's good that you know." Holding his head, Dustless smiled. "So, speaking of this," Isdef became more sly, holding Dustless's neck, "let's have a baby and use your genes to defeat you. Is this a good plan?" Chapter 1666. It's too vulgar. Staring at Isdef's eyes, Dustless mocked her unceremoniously. "The idea is beautiful, but the reality is often the opposite. But it's understandable that you can think so. Although this method is brainless, it's the only way out. So be it." Dustless gave a barely good evaluation. His direct descendants would inherit one of his many powers, such as chakra, or some dojutsu. Until now, his two daughters were the same. Then let's have a happy baby. Dustless, who was going to get up, was suddenly tired after Isdef's torment. He returned to the bed again and pressed Isdef down. This arrogant woman must not be merciful. When he got up again, it was already sunset, and the sky was faintly dark. These two guys. At dinner, everyone found the abnormality of Isdef and Dustless. They didn't say much and didn't make unnecessary explanations, but some careful people still saw the clues. Could it be? Staring at Isdef's face, Boss Nagenda's face was strange. Isdef walked lightly and even swayed. Compared with the indifference in the past, Isdef now had a trace of unconcealable seductiveness. Dustless is really capable, he can even deceive Isdef into his bed. Nagenda stared at Dustless and whispered, secretly giving him a thumbs up. "By the way, who is the traitor among us? I will absolutely forgive him." Nagenda patted the table seriously. Everyone was stunned and sighed that the main dish was coming. Everyone's eyes also looked at Dustless tacitly. "Of course it is." Dustless smiled maliciously. And the strange sight fell on Tatsumi again. Gulp. Tatsumi's heart suddenly thumped, and he said angrily, "Dustless, remember it clearly, I will repeat it again. Don't look at me with this kind of suspicious eyes. The person who betrayed the night raid is not me. Who else could it be but you?" Ignoring Tatsumi's quibble, Dustless cleared his throat and shamelessly pushed all the blame to Tatsumi. "The person who betrayed us and revealed the news to the Revolutionary Army is Tatsumi. You're framing me." Tatsumi blushed and refuted. "If it's me, please give us a suitable evidence before you say it." "That's right. To catch a thief, we must have evidence." All the members, including Boss Nagenda, nodded and looked at Dustless, expecting him to show strong evidence. "Isdef, take that out for everyone to see." Dustless gave Isdef a look, and the latter nodded immediately. Under everyone's surprised gaze, she immediately took out the decisive evidence. "Slander. This is slander. You two are working together to frame me." Looking at the evidence presented by Isdef, Tatsumi was like a furious lion and lost his usual calmness. What if this super big pit fell on his head? He must not admit it. What's more, he didn't do it. Following Isdef's gaze, he saw that she took out a stack of thick envelopes. The general content was the details of Tatsumi's betrayal of the night raid. "It doesn't matter if you don't admit it. I have a way to try." Dustless stared at Tatsumi with a smile. He could only take a step back. This thing was just fabricated out of thin air, but it was not convincing enough. However, this was enough. Dustless just needed an excuse. "I have an ability to extract other people's memory and put it on you to experiment." Suddenly, Dustless's mouth raised an extremely evil arc. The people whose memory was extracted by Rinnegan would eventually have the same result, either fall or become an idiot. You can do this kind of thing? Everyone was stunned when they heard the words, but Akame nodded thoughtfully and said without thinking, I remember that Dustless used this ability before. Tatsumi, you can experiment with it. Anyway, it's okay. Experiment? I'm not a lab rat. Tatsumi complained in his heart, and did not hesitate to curse Akame. He immediately shook his head like a rattledrum and said loudly, I'm sorry, I refuse. Tatsumi's tone was very firm. Being a lab rat was not this group of people. Of course, it didn't matter what he said. What if something went wrong in the end? And the relationship between Dustless and himself? Thinking of this, Tatsumi shuddered. Although Akame said that there was no danger, what if there was an accident? Don't worry, at most, you will become an idiot. Wu Chen's casual words made Tatsumi feel dizzy. At the moment, Tatsumi was furious. It's easy for you to say. In a word, I refuse. Refuse? A cold voice sounded from behind Tatsumi. Turning around, it was this Death who was extremely gloomy. Don't you understand now? No matter what, you're the most suspicious. Nonsense, I have never colluded with the Revolutionary Army. I haven't even seen their faces. Tatsumi argued and suddenly felt that he was very sad. He worked hard for the Revolutionary Army, but he didn't even see the Revolutionary Army's face. It was really a huge tragedy. If there are people who are against joining forces with me, is there anyone else besides you? Death held her shoulders with both hands and said disdainfully, After all, Bullet died in the hands of my subordinates. It is normal for you to hate me. Chapter 1667. Tatsumi's pupils widened. He didn't expect these two guys to cooperate so well. The tacit understanding was speechless. It was true that he hated his death because this guy killed Tatsumi. Of course, if Tatsumi knew that his death was actually just an innocent scapegoat, and the real culprit who killed Bullet was Dustless, he would definitely be choked to death. I want evidence. Again, I refuse to cooperate with the extraction of memory. Tatsumi turned his head and ignored Dustless and his death. Only idiots would cooperate. Extracting memory meant that all secrets would be controlled by Dustless. How could this be? This guy. The members of the night raid looked at each other, and were secretly annoyed with Tatsumi's behavior. This guy gave people a feeling that he would not accept any conditions. Hey, Tatsumi, there is no way if you don't cooperate. Boss Najenda threw away the long smoke in her hand and stared at Tatsumi with bright eyes. Boss, do you also think that I am not a spy? I am so touched. Tatsumi was surprised when he heard the words, and his face showed a cheerful smile. Listening to Najenda's words, it seemed that she was going to let him go and stop the absurd practice of extracting memory. At the same time, he looked at Dustless, which meant, look, the boss is still on my side in the end. Favoritism. What's the strength of this guy? Why does Najenda pay so much attention to him? Dustless glanced at Najenda with a complicated expression. Then he stared at Tatsumi for a few times with an unlucky expression. After fighting for so long, I finally won a round. It's not easy. Tatsumi laughed in his heart, and had a feeling of exultation. He excitedly walked to Boss Najenda. When Tatsumi was about to flatter her, Najenda grabbed his shoulder very abnormally. Tatsumi, I know you are wronged, but now is a special time. I hope you can be wronged, so please let Dustless extract your memory. Najenda suddenly changed her face and said very seriously, Don't worry, except for you who didn't betray everyone, other members will also have their memory extracted. Ha! Tatsumi stared straight at Najenda. Originally, he had intended to flatter her. After hearing these words, 100,000 crows flew over his forehead. He was in a bad mood and almost lost control of his spirit. I firmly object. Tatsumi rebuked loudly and pursed his mouth with a constipated look. He just planned to flatter Najenda, but she betrayed him in the next second. Dustless, come and work. Boss Najenda looked at Dustless, Tatsumi's feelings, pointed at him and said, Be quick, the next person whose memory is extracted will be Lubbock. Ha, don't worry, leave it in 1 minute. Tatsumi's Najenda, and Tatsumi, Tatsumi, with Tatsumi, and step step step. Tatsumi's head was dizzy, and his mind was spinning. What he heard was not 1 minute, but 1 minute to turn himself into a super idiot. In fact, Dustless did plan to destroy this guy's spirit and make him a retard. Let go of me. Tatsumi suddenly smashed Nagenda's hand, looked at the glass window, and jumped out without hesitation under everyone's stunned gaze. Catch Tatsumi quickly, don't let him run away, this kid is guilty. Boss Nagenda's face was replaced by a fierce look after the corner of her mouth twitched. Then other members of the night raid, as well as Boss Nagenda, all joined the task of arresting Tatsumi. This is really a disaster. It seems that it is not in your plan. I remember that you just planned to turn Tatsumi into an idiot, but this kid ran away. Death sat lazily on the sofa, looking up at the ceiling. The snow-white meatball almost broke out of her clothes. No, this is better. Although it is a little different from my plan, the ending is more perfect. Dustless suddenly smiled strangely and said in a cold voice, in this way, even if I kill Tatsumi by accident, others have nothing to say. Death raised her head and snorted. Despicable man. Despicable? Dustless's calm eyes fell on Death's head, nodded and agreed. Maybe, but it is very despicable. But often, despicable people laugh at the end, right? For example, Minister Ernest. That makes sense. Death nodded after a slight silence. It was because Minister Ernest was despicable enough that he lived freely and killed all his political enemies. Do it, don't let them beat you. If you meet Tatsumi, kill him for me, don't show mercy. After the voice fell, Dustless's body disappeared. He turned into a ray of light and went straight to the distant sky. In an instant, he surpassed Nagenda and others and followed Tatsumi closely. He chased after Tatsumi and constantly narrowed the distance between the two sides. Today's Tatsumi was not the same as before. The degree of control of Ghost Haunt was also perfect. It was not the peak, but at least he could perfectly hide his breath. After he launched the stealth skill, the members of the night raid instantly became blind. Even if Tatsumi was beside everyone, they could not perceive his existence. Sure enough, the night raid is still not suitable for me. I should go inside the Revolutionary Army. It is more suitable for me. After becoming a big official, I can also change the future of the village. Now that the boss and the Revolutionary Army have parted ways, the Revolutionary Army must be lacking a master like me. With such an idea, Tatsumi rushed to the base of the Revolutionary Army, but ignored the flash behind him. Chapter 1668. The speed of light was incredible and beyond people's cognition. It was not an exaggeration to describe it as fleeting. When moving forward, there would be a huge roar, and the vibration made people's eardrums hurt. Who is it? With such a huge movement, Tatsumi also noticed it at the first time. As soon as he turned around, a slap flew over. Bang bang bang. Kakaka. Tatsumi's head was hit a few times by an extremely violent fist, and he could still hear the sound of kakaka. His nose and teeth were broken by the owner of this light. Ouch, it hurts. Tatsumi's eyes were filled with tears due to the pain. He covered his old face with both hands and rolled on the ground in pain. Who did it? Who is it? A voice full of hatred jumped out from Tatsumi's throat. He finally escaped from the wolf's den of the night raid. He thought that he would have no worries after joining the Revolutionary Army. Who knew that God didn't give him face? He didn't escape far before an unexpected disaster came. Tatsumi, you heartless thing. You want to run away after taking the things of the night raid? At least take off, haunted spirit, and give it to me. The light turned into reality and condensed into a handsome face. The person who came had a jade-like face. His gentle face was as warm as the sun, and his smile made people involuntarily open their hearts. Only the cold eyes were as terrifying as the devil. It was not difficult to see that this person was like a smiling tiger. He was temperamental, and no one could figure out what he was thinking. Dustless. Tatsumi was furious when he saw it. His eyes were filled with hatred when he met his enemy. Before escaping the detection range of the night raid, Tatsumi unlocked the haunted spirit armor. Now because of the appearance of Dustless, Tatsumi once again used his trump card. Due to the deep resentment between the two, Haunted Spirit felt the anger in Tatsumi's soul and mutated. The dazzling light spread out. At the waist, a pair of broken wings flashed. They were full of incomplete traces like broken scrap iron. But even so, Tatsumi's momentum was several times stronger than before. Kakaka. The ground beneath his feet also began to crack chaotically. Yo! Seeing this, Dustless showed a rare expression of appreciation and complimented. Your willpower is not bad. Ghost Haunt has sensed your anger and evolved. Do you hate me so much, Tatsumi? Do I need you to tell me whether I hate you or not? I didn't mean to go against you, but you always make things difficult for me and suppress me. Today it's time to end the grudge. Clenching his fist, Tatsumi's confidence soared. Dustless smiled and said disdainfully, do you think you've improved just because you've grown trash wings? Big mistake. Rotten oranges will always be rotten oranges. Swish. Swish. Just as he finished speaking, Dustless's figure flashed and pounced over with a strong pressure. Still so fast. Tatsumi caught the afterimage coming toward him and looked cautious. Then he carefully observed for a while and said in a relaxed tone, but this time, I can see your figure clearly. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Tatsumi also rushed out without fear. With a fearless expression, he rushed toward Dustless. His huge fist was clenched into a fist, and he punched with all his strength. Bang bang bang. In the air, a white shock wave broke out and lifted everything around. The ground under their feet collapsed and turned into a big pit in an instant. It hurts. The two fought with pure strength. Tatsumi's face was pale, and he tried to hide his twitching arm because of the pain. As small as a grain of sand, Tatsumi concealed it quite cleverly. Dustless could still hear his rapid breathing several times faster. No matter how heavy the sand is when the storm comes, he can only let it go. The other hand suddenly picked up and aimed at Tatsumi's eyebrows. A very destructive light condensed in an instant. He flicked his finger, laser. So fast. Tatsumi's pupils suddenly shrank. When the light flashed, he felt that something was wrong and he moved to the left. Gotcha. Although Tatsumi's speed could be called lightning, he was still a little inferior to Dustless. The armor on his face collapsed in an instant and turned into 4 or 5 fragments. I just lost? Tatsumi was still in shock and subconsciously touched his cheek. Although the penetrating light did not penetrate his head, it made Tatsumi feel the fear of a brush with death. That feeling of almost stepping into the netherworld with a single step was truly oppressive. God did not abandon me. Scratching his palm, Tatsumi, who felt the stinging pain, exhaled heavily. Just as he was about to prepare for the battle, a ray of golden light rushed forward. Pucci. There was no time to dodge. Tatsumi's whole body was penetrated by the light, leaving a scorched scar on his chest. Sorry, Tatsumi, I really hate you. Maybe you will know why I am targeting you. In fact, there is no special reason. It's just an instinct for hunters to kill beasts when they encounter them. That's all. You. Boss Najenda can't order you to kill me. You are taking revenge. Tatsumi vomited blood and roared at Dustless. His mouth was full of blood traces. He was like a vampire. Tatsumi, listen to me clearly. In my dictionary of life, there is no such thing as order. I follow Najenda's order just to pass the time. If she makes me feel bored one day, I can still kill the night raid. No one in this world can give me orders. After the voice fell, Dustless rotated the heaven cluster cloud sword condensed by the glint fruit a few times. Tatsumi's internal organs were instantly crushed. Chapter 1669. Pucci. The severe tingling spread all over his body. Tatsumi's face was as pale as paper, and he was sweating like rain. He felt that his vitality was fading rapidly, and a sense of powerlessness deep in his soul swept everywhere in an instant. His eyes even saw the Grim Reaper who came to kill him with a sickle. In this short period of time, even Tatsumi's black hair turned white a lot. You killed your companion. The boss will definitely not let you go. Tatsumi shouted with a face full of hatred. Soon we will meet in hell, and fight again in the next life. Tut tut, your hope is doomed to fail. Dustless raised the corner of his mouth and smiled. Kill your companion? To tell you the truth, your good brother, Bullet, was killed by me. But what is the result? I still live happily until now, but you tut-tut, your appearance is really miserable. Seeing Tatsumi was so stubborn, Dustless stabbed Tatsumi's heart with the Heaven Cluster Cloud sword and penetrated deeper. Poochie. The burnt wound was full of burning smell. Tatsumi's flesh was burnt, making a disgusting smell. Bah, this smell is disgusting. How many days have you not taken a bath? Dustless looked disgusted and kicked Tatsumi out. You damn guy, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Tatsumi looked at Dustless with hatred, his scarlet eyes remembered Dustless in his mind, and then he was unwilling to die. Idiot, there are many people who hate me. Who do you think you are? Glancing at Tatsumi's body faintly, Dustless's pupils flashed a sharp light. Amaterasu. Tatsumi's whole body burned with black flames, his body was slowly swallowed and gradually disappeared. Even Dustless did not let go of his taigu, haunted by evil spirits. He destroyed all of it and burned it into black residue. You are really ruthless, you deserve to be. Death's delicate body flashed to Dustless's side. She looked at Tatsumi's disappearing body coldly. Only this black flame made her feel the fatal threat. How many trump cards does this man have that I don't know about? Her bright eyes were even more lonely. Death felt powerless for a deep-sea shark like Dustless, and at the same time, she became more firm with Dustless's plan to make a human being. I'll borrow your seed to destroy you. Death felt that this plan was quite good. At least it was the only strategy she could think of to deal with Dustless. Go back and say that this guy was killed by the Revolutionary Army, and the taiga was also taken away. Dustless took back his sight. He finally left Death's back. What if I expose your plot to kill Tatsumi? Staring at Dustless's cold face, Death pointed to her chin and teased. If that's the case, you will be betrayed by everyone. Extremely bored, Dustless glanced at Death. He said with a resolute tone. If you want to report me, you will not gossip here. Moreover, compared with each other, Najenda believes me more. I can totally bite back and say that you plot to frame me and seduce me to sleep with you. You're really shameless. Death was stunned, looking at Dustless who was not blushing and breathless. This guy looked like the kind of person who was used to lying. He was so calm. It's time to end it, immediately destroy this decaying transition, and then take you to see a new world. In the ruins of the night raid, in the temporary room. Is Tatsumi dead? It's a pity that he has worked for us for so long. Hearing the news of Tatsumi's death, Najenda's face was full of regret, but she was not sad. Yes, he wanted to join the Revolutionary Army and I caught him. In the end, he couldn't stand my torture. He told us all his plan to frame us, and his body was eaten by the dangerous species. Dustless said seriously and carefully, it was very bewitching. It was obviously made up, but everyone had a kind of immersive experience, witnessing the scene of Tatsumi's betrayal in the night raid. A traitor is just a traitor, his death is not regrettable. Mine curled her lips disdainfully. Her mouth was full of disgust and disgust. I was blind. Leonie also had a black face. She was so angry that she gritted her teeth. She wanted to skin Tatsumi alive. If Tatsumi was in front of her at this moment, she might whip his body. I didn't expect him to be a traitor. I really should kill him myself. Akame's taigu was pulled out of the scabbard. I didn't know that the guy Tatsumi was a traitor. We were all careless. Chelsea had a lollipop in her mouth, and the cold light flashed in her eyes. For traitors, no matter who they were, they had no good feelings. Forget it, Tatsumi's matter is over. The next step of the plan is to destroy the Empire. We will arrange the plan ourselves. In the future, the night raid and the Revolutionary Army will be the enemy. When saying this, the boss Najenda's tone was full of confidence. Although there were only a few people in the night raid, the soldiers of the night raid or the Empire were not as powerful as the members of the night raid. With our strength, we can completely kill the Empire's army, and then annihilate the Revolutionary Army. No force can stop the advance of the night raid. Speaking of this, Dustless's tone suddenly stopped. The Empire and the Revolutionary Army were finished, and a new ruler must be needed to control the empire. There was no doubt that Dustless was the most suitable person. After all, the person with the bigger fist had the final say, but he was not interested in being the emperor. He still released infinite Tsukuyomi to continue to destroy the world. Chapter 1670. At this moment, the imperial capital was getting dark. It was the opposite of the unprecedentedly prosperous city in the past. The revolutionary army set fire everywhere. The empire had already been crumbling and could collapse at any time. The only comfort was that the members of the revolutionary army and the night raid were not in a hurry to attack and collapse the imperial capital. This also made everyone a little more comforted. At least, Minister Ernest was extremely happy. Gulp. Inside the palace, the luxury was not reduced. Minister Ernest still had dinner with the emperor as usual. Especially Minister Ernest, the speed of eating meat was more exaggerated than before. He was afraid that he would not be able to eat meat when he went to hell. Your Majesty, you don't have to worry. It's only a matter of time before those who dare to provoke the empire are suppressed by your power. The strongest Taigu, Supreme Taser, is the ultimate existence of God. People as strong as Generalist Death were defeated by you in the end. Minister Onesta sucked up to the king while he hurriedly swept through the dazzling array of food on the table. I hope so. This time, the little emperor frowned. He was not as easy to fool as before. He was scared and said, but now except for the imperial capital, we have lost the other territories of the empire. Sooner or later, I will become the sinner of the empire's destruction. Minister Ernest was stunned when he heard the words. He did not expect that this stupid emperor would say such a thing. He could only continue to fool him. Your Majesty, you don't have to care about those unruly people. As long as you control Supreme Taser, you can crush everything, just like how you suppressed the traitor Generalist Death. Defeat all the enemies. Defeat all the enemies? Boom, boom, boom. The sound of dead silence fell. Then a black shadow fell from the sky. The interior of the luxurious palace suddenly trembled, and there were cracks around the walls. Do you want to die by breaking into the palace? Come on, kill this guy for me. Minister Onesta, who was frightened, roared. The moment the tremor appeared, he hurriedly crawled under the table, losing all his face. Damn it! Minister Ernest looked at him angrily. After seeing the person who came, he immediately cried, Your Majesty, this evil man named Dustless in front of you is the culprit of the collapse of the empire. You. The young emperor stared at Dustless with an ignorant look. Obviously, he had been deceived and manipulated by Minister Onesta. No, to the young emperor, Minister Onesta was his father. TSK, the guards of such a huge palace have all been annihilated. If you have any skills, take them out. I'll give you a chance to bloom. Then you can atone for your sins with your deaths. You want me to atone for my crimes with my death? When the emperor heard the arrogant and disrespectful tone, he flew into a rage. A special energy fluctuation appeared on his body, and the room started to tremble and collapse at an accelerated rate. Bang! With a loud bang, the palace turned into ruins. The dark and oppressive room was lit up quite a bit. Looking up, it turned out that a gentle light was descending from the sky. Ao. After a few dozen seconds, the bright sky darkened once again. A black shadow that was dozens of meters tall turned from nothingness to reality, and its mighty and extraordinary figure was exposed to the world. What the hell is that? A group of members of the night raid who raided the palace looked up at the sky. Looking at the unparalleled height and the domineering temperament, their scalps were numb. I heard from Dustless that this is the strongest Taigu, Supreme Taser. I didn't expect it to have such a powerful power, with such a terrifying height, not to mention that it is a Taigu. Even if it is a worm, it can turn the world upside down when it moves. I came and others were horrified. Even if Dustless had given them a precaution before, they were still shocked by the thunder at this moment. The oppression brought by this super monster was too deep. Just a casual glance from him would make one feel as if there was a sharp blade on one's back. It wasn't just the night attack. All the residents of the empire felt as if there was a huge guillotine on their foreheads. They all ran out of the empire with all their might. Dustless, is that the strongest Taigu you said? Is it also the first Taigu? Only the inheritor of the royal blood can open the supreme taser? Its appearance seems to be more exaggerated and tall than last time. Looking at the behemoth, even if she saw it last time and fought with it once, Esteth also lost her mind for a while, and her eyes were empty. She didn't know when she had already stood beside Dustless. Ha ha ha. You two damn guys, this time you are going to die. You will definitely die, and Supreme Taser will destroy everything. Minister Ernest laughed crazily, and even danced like a child. What is our result? You can't see it, and your current identity is just a stray dog. Don't you think you are too talkative? With a flash, Dustless turned into a huge light and arrived in front of Minister Ernest. Staring at his fat body, he quickly waved out a few light beams in succession. Poochie, poochie, poochie. The blood flew, and the ground was instantly filled with purple-red blood stains. Looking up, Minister Ernest's arms and legs were cut off, and the blood dyed the whole ground red. The air was smelly. It seemed to be smelled by the purple-red blood. It hurts. Your Majesty, revenge for me, kill this bastard. Minister Ernest screamed miserably. The hysterical voice was full of endless hatred for Dustless. Tut tut, dying casually is too easy for you, old dog. It's death. I will tell you a good way to torture people. Find a large porcelain bottle, throw Minister Ernest into it, put poisonous snakes, rats and scorpions in it, and then put honey on Minister Ernest's body, and finally, put tens of thousands of ants in it. Puff! Dustless hadn't finished his words when the old guy fainted. Looking carefully, his breath had disappeared. It wasn't hard to see from his frightened face that this old guy was scared to death. Chapter 1671. This scene was too sudden. Even Esteth didn't expect such a dramatic change. Minister Ernest, who was regarded as a devil by everyone, was scared to death by the absurdity. The torture methods you said are good. We are really the same kind of people, Dustless. Esteth's mouth was flirting with a smile, looking at Dustless's eyes, full of emotions. This guy, staring at Esteth's evil eyes, the spring-watery eyes almost melted Dustless's heart. It was very warm, but Dustless was not happy. Instead, he was a little creepy. It seemed that Esteth intended to test the methods just mentioned on Dustless once. You dare to inside Supreme Taser. The Emperor's indignant roar sounded, followed by a dark red halo, suddenly appeared in the boundless void, and the overwhelming storm swept the entire imperial capital. Damn it, that guy is desperate. Let's retreat. Najenda saw the flash in Supreme Taser's mouth, and her face was full of fear. The power of the lingering fear could be clearly felt hundreds of meters away. Her skin was about to be torn, and even blood could not help but overflow through the pores. Everyone's heart was uneasy and full of despair. At their level, if they were hit by Supreme Taser, their bodies would be shattered. You dare to use the candlelight to make a fool of yourself? No wonder this country is going to be finished. Even the Emperor is an idiot. Dustless sarcastically said. You bastard. Inside the Supreme Taser, the veins on the Emperor's forehead bulged. He clenched his teeth and spat out the 4 words. Killing the Emperor's father, Minister Ernest, was a huge blow to the young Emperor's mental state. Boom boom boom. The originally small energy ball, in an instant, responded to the Emperor's anger and became bigger. Go to hell, traitor of the Empire. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. The Emperor's scream fell. The huge red energy ball cut through the void. The light of destruction was about to engulf Dustless. Boom boom boom. Because it was too powerful, before it even landed on the ground, the hurricane created by the beam of light had already destroyed a massive number of buildings. The bustling imperial city was left in a mess. Staring at the falling light, under everyone's puzzled gaze, Wu Chen lazily raised his right arm, clenched his hand into a fist, and made a posture of preparing to attack. It seemed that he wanted to defeat the light with his bare hands. Could it be that this fellow wants to catch it with his bare hands? The members of the night raid widened their eyes, including Esteth. They were all surprised. She once had a confrontation with Supreme Taser. The result was very unfortunate. At that time, Esteth, who was sealed by Minister Ernest's trick, was not the opponent of this behemoth at all. Therefore, Isdeth was quite familiar with the power of Supreme Taser. Its strength was unprecedented. Almost no living species in the sea, land, and air could compete with it. Bring it on. Dustless glanced at the incoming attack. His right arm was covered with armament hockey. His feet slammed on the ground, and he jumped up and flew towards the flash. Boom, boom, boom. The light hit Dustless's body. Everyone was nervous. They thought that he would be blown up by the energy beam, but the result was just the opposite. Phew, phew, phew. The fluctuation that stopped was sublimated again. The movement that was bigger than before was shaking. The unparalleled light did not fall this time, but rose quickly. How is it possible? It can blow that thing away. The members of the night raid were stunned. Everyone looked at the rising light. Everyone's thinking was subverted, and their brain cells were suddenly not enough. They saw that Dustless hit all the light back with his own strength. Is that guy a human being? Not to mention the power of the beam. The temperature can melt a human being. Even the bones can be dismembered. Dustless actually hit it back with his mortal body. Is his body made of iron that can ignore the high temperature? No, even if the body is made of iron, it will be melted when it touches the high temperature. How hard is his body? Isdeth's small mouth was wide open, and her mouth twitched slightly. Even if she tried to hide the shock in her heart, she was still shocked and speechless. What would happen if a human was close to hundreds or even thousands of degrees Celsius? Needless to say, this person's end would definitely be nothing. But Dustless was still fine at the moment, completely ignoring the blazing high temperature. Not only that, but he also hit back with an even more powerful force. What kind of joke is this? The little emperor, who was inside the Supreme Taser, was also taken aback. His eyeballs were about to fall out of their sockets. Retreat quickly. The emperor panicked and quickly controlled Supreme Taser, trying to avoid the light that distorted time and space. Although the idea was beautiful, the reality was cruel and ruthless. Supreme Taser, this kind of behemoth, is similar to Sisanu. Its attack power is very strong, but its movement is slow. It can even be said to be sluggish, because this kind of move is originally used to attack the enemy, not to escape. Therefore, it was inevitable that the emperor was hit, and he was sent flying by his own move. Boom, boom, boom. Attacked by its own move, Supreme Taser's head was fatally injured, and a blazing flame mushroom cloud rose, and the high temperature melted everything. Half of the majestic Supreme Taser's head was destroyed, and even its abdomen was severely injured, showing a scorched pit, and all the equipment was sunken in. Poochie. Suffering such a serious injury, the emperor inside was naturally not spared. The tyrannical power wave directly made him dizzy, and his head was dizzy, and he could fall at any time. Looking around, Supreme Taser's entire body was emitting black smoke. Chapter 1672. Boom, boom, boom. Supreme Taser finally became an arrow at the end of its flight. Under the horrified gaze of everyone, the huge body finally tilted at an angle. Is it over? The members of the night raid wiped their sweat and sat down at the same time. Their tense nerves also suddenly calmed down, revealing a trace of joy after surviving the disaster. It was certain that if it weren't for Dustless, they would not be crushed by the huge body of Supreme Taser. As a result, these towns didn't even leave the remains of the body. Usually when it's over, it's not over yet. The roar of the sky was everywhere, spreading to every corner of the void. Looking up, Supreme Taser, who was originally tilted, actually stood up again at an incredible angle. This is the strongest Taigu, such a huge monster. It may be destroyed by one move, especially my move. The Emperor's arrogant tone came from inside Supreme Taser. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the big mouth full of fangs, there was a dark red halo again. Is this guy the type that can't be killed? When the members of the night raid saw such a scene, their faces suddenly became as pale as paper, showing fear and panic. The high-density energy ball could easily tear their bodies apart. Do you think you are big? Staring at the huge body with a sneer, Dustless sneered without hiding. If you think your body is big, You will win, you will only lose faster. Buzz buzz buzz. Suddenly, the golden energy rushed out from Dustless's body. Rising to an exaggerated height of hundreds of meters, a ferocious outline stood between the sky and the earth. The head held up the sky and the feet stepped on the ground, representing everything in the world. This guy, is this his true face? Death looked numb. She thought that the invincible figure of Supreme Taser was enough to cheat. Who knew that Dustless showed his original appearance in an instant? A samurai wearing a Tengu helmet and heavy armor suddenly appeared out of thin air like a natural disaster. This is Lu. Everyone stared at the golden giant with their mouths agape. The giant was over 100 meters tall, and was much taller than Taisei. If one wanted to see the full appearance of this giant, they would have to look up at the starry sky at a 90-degree angle. Damn it, this guy was indeed sent by the heavens to harm the Empire. He can't be allowed to live. The others are just insignificant characters. The Emperor inside Supreme Tesser cursed. That exaggerated body was even more terrifying than his Supreme Tesser. Supreme Tesser's height only reached the waist of the complete Consisinu. It's over. Dustless murmured inside Consisinu's complete body. He used his mind to control Consisinu's movements. Clang 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 clang. The golden greatsword was pulled out of its scabbard. Glaring at Supreme Taser, complete form Consisinu raised the tachi of light with both hands, and finally slashed down under Dustless's control. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. An invincible shockwave emerged. The moment it appeared, the Imperial City was split into two by that invincible sharpness. Shocking cracks also appeared on the ground. You want to destroy my empire? Don't even think about it. I will never allow it. The Emperor obviously didn't give up. The thick light in Supreme Tesser's mouth was also shot out in the end. Boom boom boom. The power of these two destructive moves was unimaginably strong. Everywhere they passed, everything was reduced to ruins. Crack. However, it was obvious that the complete form Consisinu's power was stronger. The sharp wind from the blade pierced through the huge light and tore it apart effortlessly. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Under the Emperor's desperate gaze, the hurricane that didn't slow down swept towards Supreme Tesser, who was already a fish on the chopping board. The outer armor was already showing signs of collapsing. Boom boom boom. Under the direct attack of the complete form Consisinu, the mere Supreme Taser immediately collapsed. It showed its weak side that no one knew about. It was killed by the overwhelming power. Not even a corpse was left behind. It was directly slashed apart by the blade, turning into wreckage in various parts that filled the sky. Poochie. The Emperor's entire body was slashed into pieces by the sharpness, turning into a pool of blood and a large amount of broken bones. It's finally over, right? After removing the exaggerated body of the complete form Consisinu, Dustless landed on the ground again. When he raised his head again, he found that everyone's eyes had changed. This is... You can treat me as a messenger of justice sent by the heavens to punish the Empire. If he said that he was a human, perhaps no one would believe him anymore. This unparalleled power was not something that a human could control, especially the absolute power of the complete form Consisinu. It shocked everyone, leaving an indelible impression in everyone's mind and soul. It's almost time to retreat. All the problems have been solved. Looking up at the sky, Dustless looked at the blue void, not hiding his fascination and anticipation. Speaking of which, where are Lubbock and Sisinu? Looking around, Dustless found that only the two of them were missing. The rest were all there. Just now, the two of them were blown away by the light of the Supreme Taser. Not even their bones were left. Akame lowered her head and answered. Even though she already had the resolve to be an assassin, she still felt a sense of loss. It was normal for the fish in the moat to be implicated in a fight between two monsters that were dozens of meters tall. The fact that Susanu and Lubbock were killed could only mean that the two of them were unlucky. This is fate that can't be changed. Dustless shook his head. The Emperor was dead, and the Empire had collapsed. Everything was over. The fulfillment of this world had also come to an end. Chapter 1673. Time passed quickly, and only a few days had passed. The outside world was no longer suitable for survival. The eternal light of infinite Tsukuyomi was reflected on the moon, and everything had entered the end. In the system world, Dustless brought all the members of the night raid in. After all, infinite Tsukuyomi had arrived, and all living things had entered the end. It was difficult for Akame and others to survive. I originally thought that you were a true gentleman who wouldn't be tempted, but it turns out that you are a great pervert who is even more absurd than the emperor. At first, the members of the night raid were shocked by the pavilions in the system, and there were all kinds of beautiful women and all kinds of characters. Demons, humans, gods, angels. There were all kinds of characters, and they were all beautiful. Especially the beautiful figures in the palace, there were countless of them. Cough, cough, cough. Being pointed at his nose by his death, Wuchen couldn't help but blush even though his face was as thick as the city wall. He quibbled. Didn't you say it before? If you are strong, you can do whatever you want. Why can't I be willful? Death was speechless and found herself speechless. She once said that this was the privilege of the strong. You two, it seems good here. The members of the night raid were embarrassed and looked at Death, who was staring at them helplessly. They found that this strange world was good. There were as many powerful people as there were sand in the Ganges. They also had no temper and were very easygoing. Perhaps because they were all women, they also had a sense of belonging to this sunny world. Well, you guys go around and get familiar with this world. We will be a family in the future. Waving his hand, Dustless ordered them to leave. Originally, the next world was supposed to be Demon's Tale, or the Legend of Qin's Moon. However, when he started writing, he realized that he had forgotten most of the plot. Thus, the next world would be a Fate series for the time being. Demon's Tale and the Legend of Qin would be left for later. In another direction. I don't need to help you with this time's crossing. Dustless looked at the system consciousness-ling, or speechlessly. He always felt that this guy was attacking him in a disguised way. I don't have the ability to tear space now. Crossing other worlds is even more impossible for me. Someone will summon you. Linger didn't say much. She just smiled mysteriously. Then, her body turned into a halo of light and disappeared. Her personality hasn't changed at all. She still likes to keep people in suspense. Dustless shook his head and sat down in boredom. Unexpectedly, before he could rest for a minute, he felt an inexplicable force fall on his head. Ka. The void exploded with a bang, and a deep black hole appeared above his head. It was deep and gloomy, and on the other side, it was connected to the bottomless universe. What is this? It doesn't look like a spatial tunnel. Dustless frowned. After transmigrating several times, he had gained a new understanding of space tunnels. Although he wasn't too familiar with them, he still had some understanding of them. This bottomless black hole in front of him was clearly not a space tunnel, but rather an inexplicable contract. Is this the thing Linger was talking about? I feel like something is calling out to me. Dustless was at a loss as he felt the pulling force of the black hole. After a final moment of hesitation, he took the initiative and jumped in. He could also hear strange incantations. Master and servant? What the hell is that? Why does it sound so familiar? In the unfamiliar dark space, Dustless thought to himself. Before entering the black hole, he heard strange words like master and servant. Buzz, buzz, buzz. In the dead silent space, a bright light suddenly swept across. Dustless looked over and carefully felt the special energy fluctuation for a while. After confirming that it wasn't a trap, he finally jumped in without hesitation. How is this possible? The Holy Grail War was only a battle between 7 masters and 7 servants. Why would an 8th master and an 8th servant appear now? This is absolutely impossible. As soon as he arrived in an unfamiliar world, there were shocked voices. At the same time, Dustless also understood where he had arrived. He immediately revealed a knowing smile. Dustless opened his eyes subconsciously, and 3 figures suddenly appeared in front of him. Wei Gong Qixi? This scum is definitely not my master. After glancing at the middle-aged man, Dustless's eyes fell on the 2 female figures next to him. One of them was a white woman, and the other was a blonde girl. Both of them were young, and their appearances were superb. It seems to be King Arthur and Alice Phil? It seems that she is my master. His eyes fell on Alice Phil's head, and Dustless looked at the command incantation in her hand and suddenly realized. Ahem. Miss, I am your servant and you are my master, Dustless said in a very serious tone. He felt helpless. He didn't understand the so-called incantation at all, and the so-called command incantation seemed to be just for show. It couldn't control Dustless at all. Miss. Listening to Dustless's address, Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil were speechless. Aren't hero spirits all ancient people? Since when were ancient people so fashionable? Also, what's with Dustless's clothes? He was wearing casual clothes and sports shoes. The combination was quite reasonable, and he looked very avant-garde. He was even more fashionable than the people in today's society. He didn't look like an ancient person at all. There's something weird about this guy. Saber looked at Dustless strangely. She couldn't tell what was weird about him. Forget it, we have 2 servants here. We have an absolute advantage compared to other masters who are weak. Chapter 1674. Saber was overjoyed, and a blissful smile appeared on her face. Although she did not know how the 8th master and servant appeared, the benefits were definitely greater than the disadvantages. After all, Wei Gong Qixi was Alice Phil's husband, so there was no doubt that Dustless was also an ally in the trenches. This way, their chances of winning would be much higher. After staring at Dustless for a while, Wei Gong Qixi frowned and asked, "That's strange. What holy relic did you use to summon this guy?" "You mean the holy relic?" Alice Phil could not help but smile bitterly. Who knew how Dustless appeared? She did not even chant a spell, nor did she prepare a magic circle. However, a command spell appeared in her hand out of nowhere, and Dustless, this mysterious guest, also appeared as a servant. Holy relic. Dustless also had a headache. Looking at Wei Gong Qixi's questioning eyes, he was speechless for a moment. Then he waved his hand and said impatiently, "A handsome servant does not need a holy relic." Ha! The 3 of them were stunned as they stared at Dustless. This was the first time they encountered such a strange heroic spirit. Is there something wrong with your head? Or did something go wrong during the summoning ritual? Saber complained. She was quite dissatisfied with Dustless. Wasn't he mocking the servant that needed to be summoned? Although I don't know what's going on, one thing is for sure. In this Holy Grail war, our advantage is far greater than our disadvantage. Wei Gong Qixi could not figure it out. There were too many unsolved mysteries in this world. If he could not figure it out, then he could only muddle through. What is your position? Alice Phil blinked and asked curiously. Position? Dustless complained. He was just an intruder who came in halfway. To put it bluntly, he was an illegal immigrant. Where could he find a proper account for himself? Naturally, there was no such thing as a position. I am. Dustless lowered his head and pondered for a moment. Then his eyes lit up and he replied loudly, "My job is Yendi. Let's get along harmoniously in the future." And Saber, Wei Gong Qixi, and Alice Phil looked at each other. This position meant the end of everything. Forget it, there's no need to worry about such trivial matters. The location of the Holy Grail War. This time is Dongmu City. The few of us will rush over tomorrow. But I've only booked 3 tickets at the moment. Wei Gong Qixi revealed an apologetic expression. The 3 of them were himself, Saber, Alice and Phil. Don't worry, I can fly over. Dustless smiled and said politely. Even though he didn't like the man in front of him, he still had to follow basic etiquette. It can fly. Saber, Wei Gong Qixi and Alice Phil were shocked. A spirit that could fly? Was that still a heroic spirit? He had never heard of heroic spirits being able to fly. There's nothing to be surprised about. Compared to Saber, I can't be more ordinary. With a modest smile on his face, Dustless said calmly. In that case, let's have a good night's rest. We'll rush to Dongmu City tomorrow. On the plane the next day, Wei Gong Qixi, Alice, Phil, and Saber boarded the plane together. Only Dustless set off alone, feeling bored. But before leaving, Wei Gong Qixi asked Dustless to bring along a person. Jiyu Mamie. This person was saved by Wei Gongqi once when she was young, and they were like childhood friends. Miss Mamie, it's the first time we meet. Please take care of me. Dustless elegantly extended his right arm with an imperceptible smile on his face. You get along well. Seeing Dustless's action, Jiyu Mamie was stunned. How is this a heroic spirit? He's no different from a modern person, not like an old-fashioned heroic spirit at all. Let's go. Staring at the plane taking off in the distance, Dustless suddenly reached out and hugged Jiyu Mamie. What are you doing? Let go of me. A heroic spirit is so lascivious. You're a weirdo. Jiyu Mamie, who was in a trance for a moment, snapped back to reality. Let go? Dustless ignored it when he heard that and retorted with a question. If I let go of you, how can I bring you along to fly together? Don't tell me you want to hug me. In that case, of course, it's fine, but the premise is that you don't think that I'm taking advantage of you. Jiyu Mamie was dumbfounded. She was speechless by Dustless's words. She could only be silent and let Dustless hug her snake-like waist. Jiyu Mamie's face was slightly red, and then she remembered the task that Wei Gongqi gave her and returned to normal. This guy can really fly. Looking down at the sky below, Jiyu Mamie's eyes were in a daze. The charming scenery was panoramic. She was a little obsessed for a moment, and her mind was blank. Don't call me Guy. I'm a heroic spirit. You can call my job title Yendi, but compared to the so-called job title, I prefer you to call me by my name, Dustless. Staring at the large passenger plane in front, Dustless explained in a rather bored manner. Dustless? I understand, but you're really a strange heroic spirit. Jiyu Mamie whispered. Although her voice was very soft, Dustless still heard it clearly. It just so happened that right at this moment, Wu Chen's sudden words caused her expression to go grim. Chapter 1675. Miss Jiyu Mamie. Anyway, we still have a long time. Let me guess your motive. The bored Dustless smiled and looked at Jiyu Mamie. He ignored her expression and said to himself, logically speaking, you should have known that the Holy Grail War would be held in Dongmu City, and you should have already booked the tickets. You are Wei Gongqi's assistant, and that guy is very smart. It is impossible for him to forget to book the tickets for you. Then there is only one possibility. Ignoring Jiyu Mamie's stunned expression, Dustless continued to analyze. If you are with me, it is just to test my ability, right? If you think that I am useless, I guess you will set a trap to lure other servants to kill me, and you and Wei Gongqi will ambush the other party's master, right? What a cunning and smart vile man. Dustless explained to himself. His expression was calm, as if what he said was just a small matter. In fact, Dustless hated Wei Gongqi very much. He was extremely despicable. Of course, Dustless also belonged to the despicable and shameless type. He was not qualified to criticize others, but there should be a bottom line for everything. For the so-called justice, he used his own wife as bait, and let Alice Phil pretend to be Saber's master to lure other masters to kill him. Who else could be so despicable? For the sake of justice, he actually used his own wife as bait. Yo! At this moment, Dustless suddenly felt that his head was cold. He turned his head and saw a black pistol aimed at his head. You have such an intense behavior, which means that my previous guess was true. Gently shaking his head, Dustless felt that Jiyu Mamie and Alice Phil were not worth it. They were sacrificed for that scum Wei Gongqi. Who are you? Jiyu Mamie's eyes were cold, and her tone was unfriendly. Pointing a gun at a heroic spirit? You are playing with fire. Dustless replied indifferently as he looked at the void in front of him. I just want to tell you that if you and Wei Gongqi have any unrealistic plans or plans against me, you better give up as soon as possible. We are now allies in the same trench. I am also very interested in the Holy Grail. Moreover, you're just a mere human. Don't you think you're too naive and laughable to scheme against a heroic spirit? Dustless sneered coldly. Don't you dare look down on humans. Takumi Jiyu snorted in dissatisfaction. Besides, no matter how powerful or special you are, you're still just a human when you're alive. This guy is really ignorant. Dustless could not help but laugh when he heard that. So this guy actually thought that he was dead. However, most heroic spirits were like that. They were all summoned to participate in the Holy Grail War. Not everyone was as cheat-like as Dustless. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At this moment, a series of sonic booms suddenly sounded in front of them. The mysterious object's tail was covered in flames, and it directly blasted towards the flying plane. It didn't matter that Dustless did not recognize it, but Takumi Juyu, who was often in contact with firearms, was shocked. She said in panic, "Oh no, that thing is a cruise missile." Cruise missile? Hearing that, Dustless's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise, and then he frowned. This kind of thing was naturally useless against him. Not to mention a cruise missile. Even if an atomic bomb came, it would be useless. With Saber's strength, she would probably be fine. However, whether or not Wei Gongqi and Aliceville would be spared was a question mark. Boom boom boom. The speed of the missile was beyond imagination. When Dustless was about to intercept it, the flying plane was attacked by the missile and instantly exploded into a pile of fire. "Jisi." Takumi Juyu shouted nervously and worriedly. The first thing she was worried about was not Saber and Aliceville. It was enough to prove that the relationship between the two was extraordinary. "I'm fine." Through his perverted vision, Dustless saw that in the explosion of the fire, the three of them were fine. It's normal for Aliceville to be fine with Saber's protection. But why is Wei Gongqi safe and sound that light? Could it be the sheath of the holy sword Avalon? Dustless thought to himself. He saw that Wei Gongqi's body was flowing with holy light. He was not injured, but the passengers on the plane could not escape the nightmare. They were all killed by the cruise missile. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. Although their lives were saved because they were in the sky, the three of them quickly fell down. Wan Xiang Tianing. His left arm erupted with a strong gravitational force, and the three people who fell to the sea were forcibly absorbed by Dustless. Such a convenient ability, not bad. Floating around Dustless, Saber and the other two were relieved. They stared at Dustless nervously, afraid that this guy would be distracted and throw them down. Although I don't know what happened, one thing is certain. It should be the other masters who attacked us. Dustless analyzed seriously, and looked at Wei Gongqi with a strained expression. He said with difficulty, "My gravitational control is average. I can only support 2 people flying. It's all my fault for being useless. I'm really sorry. How about this, Wei Gongqi? I'll temporarily put you on the Pacific Ocean, and leave with Saber and Aliceville first. You can swim to Dongmu City by yourself. How about that?" This guy. Wei Gongqi was furious when he heard that. This is the center of the Pacific Ocean. You want me to swim to Japan? This vulgar and low-level joke was simply too bad. Chapter 1676. Swimming from the Pacific Ocean to Japan? Are you out of your mind? Before Kamiya Kazi could refute, Kuyumamiya yelled, "That's impossible. No human in this world can swim from the Pacific Ocean to Japan. TSK, I'm just a special case. Although I'm using my flying ability." Dustless smiled and teased. "All in all, I can only carry 3 people at most: Saber, Alice, Faye, and you. As for the others, I'm sorry, I can't help." "Is that so? Then you can take the 3 of them and leave." Kamiya Kazi sighed and waved his hand. "I'll call a ship. When we reach Dongmu City, you must be careful, especially Yanfeng Chili. You must pay attention to him. I suspect that the cruise missile incident was done by that guy. I have a very dangerous feeling. That guy will be the strongest enemy we'll ever meet. No matter what, he's just a human." Dustless pursed his lips. Yanfeng Chili was indeed dangerous when humans fought against humans. However, if he was caught by a hero spirit, he would be nothing more than an ant. "Where's the person who attacked us?" Saber widened her eyes and wiped her mouth. She carefully looked down at the large number of uninhabited islands in the sea below. She could not find where the person who attacked them was hiding. "There are too many scattered islands." Saber smiled apologetically. Although she was a hero spirit, she was not a god. She could not find a person on the ground hundreds of meters away, or even 1,000 meters in the air. "Leave it to me." Dustless smiled and said, "As long as all these islands are sunk, no matter if it's master or servant, they won't be able to escape." Ka ka ka. As soon as he finished speaking, a high-density energy ball appeared in front of Dustless's thumb. As the force was too strong, the surrounding void was distorted and collapsed. "Who ordered you to use your noble phantasm?" Kimiyakaze shouted angrily. "Noble phantasm?" Dustless glanced at Kimiyakaze and said coldly, "If this is a noble phantasm, then I have too many of them." Wang Su's flash. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. With a flick of his finger, the energy ball shot out towards the scattered islands on the ground. Boom boom boom. The calm sea surface trembled, and waves that were dozens of meters high splashed. Then the scattered islands in an extremely simple manner. Gullah. Saber couldn't help but be stunned when she saw the exaggerated range of the attack. Even with such a large distance, it was still able to raise an island hundreds of meters away to the ground. The power of the attack was self-evident. No matter what, as long as there are masters and servants on this island, they're all dead meat. Wu Chen's narration was as light as a breeze. It was as if he had done something like eating and drinking water. It was unbelievably calm. Bastard. Wei Gongqi, who regained his senses, was enraged. He glared at Wu Chen. He always felt that this rascal was always going against him. "You've sunk all the islands, what about me?" Kimiyakaze's expression was bitter. Dustless's flying ability could only carry 3 people at most. Hence, he had to stay behind. Now that the islands had sunk, how could he accept it? "That's your problem, Mr. Master." Dustless smiled innocently. To be honest, he had purposely tricked Kimiyakaze. "Goodbye, Kimiyakaze. Swim all the way to Dongmu City." With a smile, the gravitational force on Kimiyakaze disappeared. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. A black shadow fell straight into the sea. "Master, are you sure you're okay? What if the other servants attack you?" Saber asked anxiously. She stared at Dustless and then at Alice Phil. "It's okay. Since Kimiyakaze asked us to leave first, he must have other ways to get to Dongmu City. Everyone, please believe in him." Alice Phil did not show much emotion. She smiled and explained, "I believe in Kimiyakaze. He will definitely be able to get through this." "Master, your relationship is really deep. I'm envious of you." Dustless made a jealous expression and immediately pointed to the sea below and said, "You may not have noticed, but I, with my special ability, happened to see Kimiyakaze being chased by a group of sharks, Dongmu City. In an obscure and unknown room, 2 middle-aged men were conversing. One of them was dressed like a middle-aged priest, while the other was an elegant man in a red suit, Toshimi Nagasaka. "Kiri, have you found the trace of the 8th Einherjar?" Toshiomi looked at the man in front of him expectantly. "Found it. This is the video of that guy. At that time, my assassin attacked him." Yenfeng Kiri handed the saved video to Toshiomi. "Did that guy find assassin?" While staring at the video with interest, Toshiomi Inaka asked calmly on the other side. "I don't think so. Assassin is good at assassination. The 8th Einherjar did not find him." Yenfeng Kiri said truthfully. "Is that so? It seems like he's just an insignificant character. Don't worry." Toshiomi was relieved and labeled Dustless as a cheap guy. "That's not right." Toshiomi frowned and asked, "Since he did not find assassin, how did assassin get killed by someone else?" "This?" Yenfeng Kiri said helplessly. "Although assassin was not found, that guy seemed to be enraged. He used his noble relic to destroy all the islands. Assassin was also killed instantly. All the islands were sunk by him." Chapter 1677. In other words, he used his noble phantasm to destroy all the islands. It seems to be quite powerful. He seems to be a powerful hero spirit, but he's just an idiot who doesn't use his brain. This was the first time he had heard of such a willful heroic spirit. However, after thinking about it carefully, he understood. Heroic spirits like this were sometimes easier to deal with. An intelligent and powerful figure was the most difficult to deal with. It's good to be impulsive. Then Toshiomi Inaka smiled in relief, and said in a tone that suggested there was nothing to be afraid of. "There's no need to worry. There's no need to be afraid of such a powerful young heroic spirit. A poisonous snake that knows how to endure and hide in the dark is the most terrifying. Tachiomi smiled elegantly and poured himself a glass of red wine. He was glad that Dustless was an idiot who did not know when to stop. But Yenfengili frowned slightly. Master hasn't had the time to watch the video. That guy's master seems to be Takemiya Cheshire's wife, Alice Phil. Hearing that, he spat out the red wine that he had just drunk. His good mood was gone. Tachiomi Inosaka's face was dark, and his hands were sweating. If that was the case, Alice Field would definitely do her best to assist Wei Gongqizi in obtaining the Holy Grail. Even if Dustless was an idiot with low IQ, his destructive power was still extremely strong. No matter how bad a heroic spirit's combat power was, it was definitely stronger than a human's. When did they come to Dongmu City? Once they arrive, order your assassin to ambush them immediately. Also, send this video to the other masters through the secret channel. If everyone knows about it, we might work together to deal with them. The assassin that was killed by Dustless was just a clone of assassin. In the evening, Dustless, who was dragging 3 people, finally arrived at Dongmu City. As soon as they arrived at their destination, Takeo Juyu left impatiently. She might have gone to look for Takemiya Cheshire. TSK, Miss Takeo Juyu and Mr. Takemiya are really close. Dustless walked to Alice Phil and deliberately raised his voice to insinuate something. Saber reflexively kicked out, but Dustless dodged in time. However, Saber was Saber after all. She turned around and hugged Dustless tightly. Then, she dragged Dustless a short distance away. Are you trying to sow discord between us? As far as heroic spirits are concerned, this is simply too despicable. Saber, who was holding on to Dustless tightly, scolded loudly. Please don't do anything that will tarnish the reputation of the heroic spirits. Everyone will be humiliated if you do that. Cough, cough, cough. Before we talk, can you please send me off first? Dustless awkwardly glanced at Saber, who was hugging him tightly. He lowered his head and said helplessly, Saber, with all due respect, you don't seem to understand the nature of the Holy Grail War. Dustless, do you think I'm an ignorant little girl? How can I not understand this kind of thing? Saber pouted and complained unhappily. She felt that her intelligence was being insulted by Dustless. The so-called Holy Grail War was actually 7 sorcerers, and their heroic spirits fighting against each other. The end result was also quite simple. The winner was king. No, you misunderstood me. Dustless shook his head when he heard that. His eyes shone brightly as he explained. The reason why you joined the Holy Grail War this time should be because of the universal wishing machine. The Holy Grail, right? To be honest, I'm actually here for it as well. However, everyone seems to have gotten one thing wrong. Aren't all the Sarvant and Msader doing this for the same purpose? Saber nodded affirmatively. No, everyone has made a mistake. The so-called Holy Grail can only fulfill one person's wish, and us candidates, including all the masters and Sarvant, have a total of 14 people. No, after including myself and Alice Phil, the total number of candidates added up to 16. Dustless raised his voice and said meaningfully, even if you defeat everyone in the end, do you think Wei Gongqizi will give the Holy Grail to you? This Keisai will probably give the Holy Grail to me. Saber lowered her head in uncertainty. Who knows what choice Wei Gongqizi will make in the end? Saber, I can tell you clearly. If you win and defeat all the masters and Sarvant, then Wei Gongqizi will probably use the command spell to make you commit suicide. This way, the Holy Grail will be his alone. That guy has an extremely naive dream. He wants to eliminate all evil in this world. This is simply a fool's dream. Such a thing is impossible. Where there are people, there will be conflict. This is fated. Unless that guy wipes out all of humanity, then there will only be justice left in this world. Dustless's tone was filled with a bewitching charm. Every word he said was like a gem to Saber. It was very convincing. After all, these were undeniable facts. In the original work, Inaka Tashimi had actually planned to do so. After the Hero King killed all the heroic spirits, Inaka Tashimi would use the command spell to order Gilgamesh to commit suicide. His method was very sinister. How would you know such a thing? Saber stared at Dustless with a face full of questions. About this, Dustless felt a headache coming on. He couldn't possibly say that he had transmigrated, right? He could only make up a reason to fool Saber. You immature fledglings do not understand the truth. I have participated in 3 Holy Grail wars. No. Including this Holy Grail war, I have participated in 4 Holy Grail wars. In the past, I had helped the masters defeat all their enemies. However, those 3 shameless masters used the command spell to order me to commit suicide. Chapter 1678. Saber was stunned when she heard that. She stared at Dustless and fixed her gaze on him. She could not move anymore. She did not expect Dustless to have such a torturous experience. I don't think Jishi is that kind of person. After hesitating for a while, Saber finally chose to believe Jishi. It's hard to know what's in a person's heart. Most of my previous masters were cunning and despicable anyway, Dustless said nonchalantly. He knew that his plan to trick Saber into betraying him had failed. If it was a Chinibu like Gilgamesh, he might have been able to trick her into betraying Tashimi Nagasaka. No. In the original work, Gilgamesh betrayed Tashimi Nagasaka and joined Yanfeng Chili. However, Saber was different. It was impossible for her to be as unprincipled as Gilgamesh. She deeply believed in the spirit of chivalry and viewed traitors as disgraceful scum. It was unrealistic to think that he would betray Wei Gong Kisi with just a few words. Moreover, even if Saber betrayed Jishi, she did not seem to have a suitable master. At that moment, Dustless suddenly raised his eyebrows. The boredom on his face disappeared and was replaced by excitement. Is there something wrong? Saber asked with a frown. She subconsciously looked at Aliceville. She and Dustless were both powerful heroic spirits. Naturally, they would not be afraid of other heroic spirits. The only weak one was Aliceville, who was her master. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. He looked at Aliceville. As expected, a black shadow was rushing toward them. How despicable. Saber snorted angrily. She quickly swooped down with her sword. His aura is hidden very well. It's almost impossible to catch him. Moreover, this Sarvankt is a new face. Could he be assassin who specializes in assassination? He has a lot of doppelgangers. His methods are despicable, but he's smart. He knows that it's not me and Saber, so he's actively looking for weaker prey to attack. Dustless touched his chin. He suddenly thought of a black-bellied priest, Yanfeng Chili. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from behind him. Dustless subconsciously turned his head, and a cold dagger was mercilessly stabbing towards his heart. Shinra Tensei. A powerful repulsive force erupted, and the black shadow that had launched a sneak attack was immediately sent flying. Boom boom boom. The black shadow that was sent flying smashed into the surrounding streets, leaving a long mark on the ground. It seemed to have suffered quite a bit of damage, and there were obvious dents on its body. Is it really assassin? Dustless raised his eyebrows and subconsciously glanced at Saber's opponent, who was also assassin. There seemed to be quite a number of such doppelgangers. Yanfeng Chili. Dustless raised his eyebrows slightly and a fierce look flashed across his face. Aiming at the wailing black shadow, a cold light flashed from his fingertip and mercilessly shot over. Void Flash. The colorful energy ball charged up for a moment before it locked onto Assassin and blasted toward her. Boom boom boom. The powerful flash swept her away, and the streets on both sides were instantly turned into nothingness by the energy released by Void Flash. At the same time, Saber's battle also came to an end. The result was without a doubt. Saber had completely defeated her opponent. This combination is very troublesome, Master. In a secret room somewhere, Yanfeng, Chili, and Tashiomi Inaka sat together. The battle screen in front of them was the scene of Dustless and Saber's battle. Yeah, both of them are pretty strong. That Saber is the strongest job class, and this strange Yendi is also a pretty strong heroic spirit. Tashiomi Inaka nodded solemnly and couldn't help but feel annoyed. Originally, he and Yanfeng, Chili, and a strong heroic spirit like Gilgamesh had given them the confidence to win this Holy Grail war. Who would have thought that the 8th heroic spirit would suddenly jump out? Yendi Dustless. He had ruined a great victory. Just thinking about it made Tashiomi Inaka feel constipated. Moreover, Yendi Dustless and Saber were bound to be an iron alliance. It couldn't be broken up so easily. After all, their masters were husband and wife. We can also join forces with the other masters. An idea flashed through Yanfeng's mind. He leaned close to Tashiomi Inaka's ear and whispered, "Master, we can totally do that. For example, we can join forces with that guy." Humph. Despicable and vile people. Leave that kind of bastard to me alone. At that moment, an extremely arrogant and disdainful voice sounded. A golden flash entered Yanfeng, Chili, and Tashiomi Inaka's eyes. Looking at it carefully, this person was completely golden. He wore golden armor and had short golden hair. His expression was unruly, as arrogant as a god looking down on ants. Where are those two bastards? Tell me, and I'll personally eliminate these two eyesores. Gilgamesh said arrogantly, joining forces with the other heroic spirits is an insult to this king. But, let's see the situation first. Tashiomi Inaka was secretly angry, but facing Gilgamesh, he really couldn't bring out any confidence. He could only nod and agree. In fact, he really wanted to say to Gilgamesh, "You are a super big idiot who doesn't care about anyone else." In fact, at this moment, not only Tashiomi Inaka and Yanfeng, but the other masters and servants were also frowning. In the previous Holy Grail War, such a thing had never happened. Two heroic spirits stood on the same side, while the other heroic spirits were all alone. In comparison, they were at a great disadvantage. Chapter 1679. My king. Why don't we observe for a while? Find out how Saber and the male heroic spirit's noble phantasm are moving. Tashiomi and Osaka's expression was respectful as he lowered his head. He was more respectful than seeing his own father. What you say makes sense, you bastard. This one will listen to your arrangements. I hope this gathering won't make this one feel bored and depressed. Gilgamesh's body lost its texture and turned into a golden light that dissipated. The Hero King's ability to put on airs is better than fighting. Yanfeng Chili saw the miserable Tashiomi and Osaka, and couldn't help but shake his head. Sometimes, it's not necessarily a good thing for a heroic spirit to be too strong. Tashiomi and Osaka was called a bastard, and he couldn't refute it, but he had to be respectful. You can imagine how depressed Tashiomi and Osaka was. At this time, in another direction, more and more assassin doppelgangers came to attack from all directions. It was obvious that they had been deliberately instructed to attack Aliceville, who was weaker in terms of strength. 90 Black Coffin. The black light that was enough to cut a mountain flashed out of thin air, and cut the assassins in front of them. Even so, there were still many splits. There are too many assassins. Saber's hair was slightly messy, and she was panting, looking tired. Their intention is very simple. They want to force us to use our noble phantasm. Dustless was familiar with Yanfeng Chili's intention. I'm afraid that we have been targeted by many heroic spirits. Observation Haki spread out, and the scene within a few hundred meters fell into Dustless's eyes. Oh. The final king Gilgamesh, the Conqueror King, and Lancer Delumudo Odina are secretly watching the changes in the battle. Dustless's mouth curled into an imperceptible smile. In the original work, Lancer might have come out to cause trouble at this time. Now that Dustless and Saber were allies, this unexpected change might make him hesitate to attack the rat for fear of breaking the vases. For a moment, he hesitated whether to go to war with Dustless and Saber. Whoosh! Several sharp sounds came into his ears. Dustless looked up and saw more than a dozen noble phantasms pouring down. This dazzling light. Is it the king's treasure? Dustless's face showed a nostalgic look. The ability of Gate of Babylon was not limited to Gilgamesh. But it's really a pity that your opponent is me, Dustless said softly as the spiritual pressure in his body surged. Binding Path's 81st step, air severing. In an instant, a transparent barrier appeared in front of Dustless. How dare you try to block this king's light with such a fragile object? You're overestimating yourself. The street lamp suddenly turned black as a stream of light materialized. Standing on it was none other than Hero King Gilgamesh. Bastards who are hiding in the surroundings, come out for this king. Gilgamesh's arrogant eyes swept across the surroundings. His voice was like thunder, spreading over a radius of several hundred meters. Who is this arrogant heroic spirit? Since you're so arrogant, do you dare to tell me your name? Lancer, who was holding 2 guns, had no choice but to walk out from the darkness. Who knows? I didn't expect that other than me, there would be someone else who dares to call himself a king. A rough and heroic voice came from the sky. A tall and strong man who was riding 2 mighty bulls also descended from the sky. However, among these 8 heroic spirits, one of them is about to die. How sad. Gilgamesh looked down at Dustless arrogantly. He turned a deaf ear to the barrier that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Bang, bang, bang. The falling treasures all landed on the enchantment. Everyone thought that the enchantment would collapse on the spot, but who would have thought that it was unexpectedly sturdy, and nothing happened at all. On the contrary, Gilgamesh's attacks were all blocked. You're just a so-called king. You don't know your place. Dustless looked at Gilgamesh hopelessly. He couldn't help but find it funny. After all, he was just the king of a narrow land. What did he have to be so arrogant? You bastard. When Gilgamesh heard what was said, his face twisted. His scarlet eyes were filled with anger. Gilgamesh felt that he was being humiliated by Dustless's unscrupulous gaze. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Countless ripples appeared in the void behind him. Soon after, a large number of golden weapons appeared. Each of them was dazzling and sharp. They could all be called masterpieces. It was undeniable that Gilgamesh was only interested in the best items. He probably wouldn't even look at trash. This guy, the Conquest King, had a serious expression. He looked at the large amount of light above Gilgamesh's head, and couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression. At first glance, they were all relics. You can tell where this guy came from? Which era is he a hero from? Conquest King Iskandar asked the skinny young man beside him. Who knows? In short, this guy is very strong. The young man rolled his eyes and said, I asked you to watch the battle, but you insisted on coming out to cause trouble. You even said that you wanted to persuade the other heroic spirits to be your subordinates. Such actions are extremely foolish. The young man was called Weber Velvet, Conquest King Iskandar's master. Although I don't know which era Golden Twinkle came from, there might be a heroic spirit appearing now. Lancer looked at the gorgeous light with a serious expression. He didn't dare to be careless. At the same time, his gaze locked onto Dustless was filled with pity. Be careful, Dustless. Saber also noticed the abnormality here. She quickly rushed over to provide support, but she was forcefully stopped by Assassin. Both parties were once again engaged in a fierce battle. Seems like I have been underestimated. Dustless touched his nose in amusement. Without giving Gilgamesh a chance to attack, he turned into a flash and appeared behind him. The light was fleeting, and no one noticed it. They only saw Dustless suddenly vanishing. Speed is power. Have you ever been kicked at the speed of light? Hero King. Chapter 1680. With the speed of light reaching nearly 300,000 kilometers per second, even if a god came, wanting to see Dustless's trajectory clearly was no different from a dream, much less a mere heroic spirit. Who dares to sneak an attack on this king? Upon hearing this contemptuous voice, Hero King Gilgamesh immediately turned his head. However, what struck him in return was a destructive beam of light. It was so blinding that Gilgamesh's eyes were nearly blinded. He hurriedly closed his eyes. Lightspeed kick. Hero King Gilgamesh suddenly felt an excruciating pain in his face, as though his bones were about to break. He was instantly sent flying. This merciless kick had sent Gilgamesh vanishing without a trace. Bam! The land hundreds of meters away suddenly trembled. Only then did everyone see the miserable Gilgamesh lying on the ground half dead. He only had a weak aura left, but he was barely able to survive. He's so fast. I didn't even see how he appeared behind that golden shimmering body. Web Velvet looked as though he had seen a ghost. Idiot. Even I didn't see it, much less a dabbler like you. Conquest King Iskandar punched Web in the head in a bad mood. His expression was somewhat gloomy. Everyone believed that Dustless was about to be finished off, but who knew that this fellow's tiny universe would erupt, instantly crushing the golden shimmering body? Is that the power of a treasure artifact? Lancer was similarly dumbfounded. He suddenly felt thankful that his enemy was not Dustless, or his outcome would definitely be no different from Gilgamesh's. Furthermore, it wasn't only the Conquest King. In fact, even Lancer did not see how Dustless moved. Bastard, 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 bastard. Hero King Gilgamesh touched his cheek. In his rage, he hammered the ground angrily. His right hand was a bloody mess, but he did not feel any pain. Ka. Hero King Gilgamesh's heart shattered into sand, forever unable to heal. As he touched his face, a gigantic footprint was imprinted on his face like a birthmark. This was all thanks to Dustless. Wow, you have become a lot more handsome. After carefully scrutinizing Hero King Gilgamesh, Dustless gave him a thumbs up and continued striking him. As expected of a king, that handsome face of yours is definitely unparalleled. Dustless's words attracted everyone's attention. Everyone looked at Hero King Gilgamesh's face in unison, as they roared with laughter. Haha. What's up with that guy? There's actually a shoe print on his face. Coupled with his sullen expression, it's just too exciting. Iskandar the Conquest King laughed so hard that his eyes were watering and his stomach was hurting. It's indeed comical. Lancer wore an odd expression as he stared at the footprint on Hero King Gilgamesh's face. Haha, well done. It's best if this hateful Hero King is beaten up by others. Ha. Toshiomi Inosaka, who was in the same room as Yenfone Kiri, also saw this scene through a special screen. When he saw the clear shoe print on Hero King Gilgamesh's face, he felt abnormally refreshed. He even specially opened a bottle of champagne. Darn Hero King. It's good that he's taught a lesson like this. It saves him the trouble of putting on that disgusting face of his all day. This guy doesn't have any awareness of being a servant. It's as though I owe him everything. Toshiomi Inosaka took a sip of his red wine, and smiled elegantly. There was nothing wrong with Gilgamesh suffering a setback. It allowed him to face the strength of other heroic spirits. It would save him the trouble of calling himself a bastard every time he opened his mouth. That heroic spirit sure is ridiculously strong. He was able to send Hero King Gilgamesh flying with a kick. He must have been an important figure when he was alive. That punk Kamiya Kaseki sure is lucky. It's fine if he has Saber helping him, but now he has such a powerful heroic spirit. He's like a tiger that has grown wings. Yenfone Kiri looked nervous and was not as happy as Toshiomi Inosaka. In a short period of time, his assassin army was nearly wiped out. Let's join forces with the other masters. That way, our chances of victory will be greater. Toshiomi Inosaka was secretly delighted for a moment, before regaining his composure. After all, Hero King Gilgamesh was his servant. It was fine to be happy for him, but he could not kick him while he was down. After all, they still had to work together to deal with the other masters. Is that all you've got? You can call yourself a king with such half-baked standards? I think I can become a god. Squinting his eyes, Dustless teased with a faint smile. Tisk tsk. That face of yours is so domineering no matter how I look at it. Bastard, don't get carried away. Hero King Gilgamesh stared at Dustless with a ferocious expression. A beam of light that was hundreds of meters long appeared in the void. At least a few thousand treasures flew out from it. This punk will use parting sortie sooner or later after being provoked by me. Dustless stroked his chin. He was also the owner of the king's treasure, so he naturally understood Gilgamesh's ability. So. Cold beams shot over like torrential rain. Thousands of weapons launched their attacks at the same time. The scene was extremely spectacular. Conquest King Iskandar and Lancer quickly retreated, afraid of being caught in the crossfire. How can such attacks be effective against me? There's no need to even dodge, much less defend against them. Dustless shook his head and simply stood in place without moving. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. His body was constantly being shattered by the sword beams, but Dustless did not fall to the ground. He did not even bleed or suffer from the most basic injuries. This scene dealt a heavy blow to Hero King Gilgamesh. The enemy was right in front of you, but you did not have the ability to hurt him. Instead, you were being humiliated and ridiculed by your opponent. Was there anything more tragic than this in the world? Hero King Gilgamesh hated Dustless to the core. This rascal had looked down on him for no reason. Now he had even used sorcery to ignore his attacks. He felt extremely aggrieved. Gilgamesh felt terrible, and was about to explode. Chapter 1681. Gilgamesh's face was contorted. It was no wonder he was so furious. He had an extremely conceited temper to begin with. He could not tolerate sand in his eyes. For an ordinary person to look at him directly was the greatest insult to Gilgamesh. Now that Dustless had taught him a lesson, Gilgamesh could no longer tolerate it. Shoo, shoo, shoo. No matter how he attacked, he was unable to harm Dustless. That calm face was silently mocking Gilgamesh's powerlessness and frailty. I'll stand here and let you hit me. The key is, can you hit me? You have completely infuriated me, bastard. Gilgamesh's face was even more contorted. His scarlet eyeballs protruded outwards as though they could fall out at any moment. He was really about to go berserk. I've never liked to cause trouble, but Dustless's eyelids lifted slightly as he revealed a cold look. If you insist on courting death, if I don't teach you a lesson, I'll be looking down on you, the Hero King. With just you? This king shall tell you. Before Gilgamesh could finish his words, tragedy struck. Yomi no Miyazaka. Dustless's forehead revealed a scarlet Samsara Sharingan, as he appeared behind Gilgamesh without any warning. He delivered another merciless kick. Lightspeed kick. Boom, boom, boom. Gilgamesh's body exploded with flames once again as he was engulfed by the flames. His beautiful golden armor was covered in dust as he was sent retreating by Dustless's kick. He was in a sorry state. Shoo, shoo. At this moment, a sharp beam suddenly came from behind, and was about to pierce through Dustless's head. Clang, 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 clang. At the critical moment, a black figure blocked the sneak attack with a sword. Like a shield, she defended Dustless's back. The cold beam was also intercepted by Saber. You should thank me, Dustless. The person who came to his rescue was Dustless's ally Saber. Thank you? Saber, do you think I'll be finished off by a scoundrel? Dustless turned his head slightly and glanced at the person who was fighting with Saber. It was Lancer. I don't think you're the kind of person who would ambush someone. Is this Master's command curse? Dustless lowered his head and fell silent as he stared at Lancer, who was drenched in cold sweat and had a pained expression. Then, I have no choice but to destroy you. Dustless, who had kicked Gilgamesh away, suddenly looked at Lancer's head. His eyes turned cold, and the tip of his thumb was already glowing with a destructive light. This guy is my opponent. Seeing that Dustless was about to intervene, Saber hurriedly shouted to stop him. She exerted force in her arms and instantly forced Lancer to retreat. Then Saber chased after Lancer and launched a fierce attack. She looks like a woman on the outside, but she's a powerful lion on the inside. Lancer looked at Saber in shock. That powerful force had numbed his arm. You should be able to kill me quickly if you join forces with that guy. Why did you let go of such a good opportunity? Lancer expressed his confusion. He knew Dustless's strength. If he joined forces with Saber, it would only be a matter of time before they defeated him. But even if the two of you joined forces, I could still hold on for a while. Lancer added arrogantly. No, you misunderstood me. Saber shook her head and said softly. If Dustless and I joined forces, it would go against the spirit of the Night's Way. If the two of us really joined forces, you wouldn't be able to resist. That guy could even kill you alone. Don't you see? Dustless has been teasing that gold sparkle. Lancer fell silent and looked at the miserable Gilgamesh. This guy was simply the synonym of tragedy. After being beaten and humiliated by Dustless, he lost all his dignity as a heroic spirit. "I'm going to kill you," Gilgamesh roared, and the void was filled with countless sword shadows again. The golden vortex kept flashing, and sharp swords shot out, all aimed at Dustless's head. It was enough to see the hatred this petty hero king had for Dustless. What a problematic child. Looking at Gilgamesh, whose face was filled with murderous intent, Dustless let out a long sigh. This guy's strength was second to none, but his tolerance was really unflattering. "Then, I'll give you an eye for an eye." With a teasing look on his face, Dustless waved his hand, and the sky behind him also flashed with a large halo. The dazzling light made Gilgamesh's mind go into a trance. He carefully experienced the nature of the power. After a while, Gilgamesh opened his mouth wide. His exaggerated appearance was enough to fit an adult's fist. This kind of energy fluctuation is definitely not wrong. How does this bastard know my ability? Gilgamesh glared angrily, and his teeth were about to shatter. What's the situation with this Holy Grail war? Who is that guy? He even knows how to use the Hero King's ability? Then what use do I have for Gilgamesh? Damn it. Is the Holy Grail going to be given up to that punk, Takemiya Kisi? Not only was Gilgamesh, who was in the middle of a battle, so shocked that his jaw nearly dislocated, even his master, Enosaka Tashimi, was staring at Dustless in shock. Golden light dotted the top of his head, and countless divine weapons slowly poked their heads out. The range was even greater than Gilgamesh's. Imposter, you imposter. Gilgamesh had completely forgotten his appearance as a heroic spirit. He was like a shrew pointing at Dustless, who was using the gate of Babylon, and cursing. His eyes were about to crack, and he was about to suffer from internal injuries. Chapter 1682. The veins on Gilgamesh's forehead were bulging. He looked as ferocious as an evil spirit. He felt that his dignity and soul had been trampled on by the despicable guy in front of him. Shoot him through. Gilgamesh, who could not take it anymore, took the lead to attack. Divine weapons fell from the sky like a storm. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Dustless did not show any weakness. He immediately launched a deadly counterattack. The lights that decorated his head were also shot out mercilessly. Clang, 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 clang. Sparks flew everywhere. There were traces of broken steel everywhere. The divine weapons that were shot out by both parties were damaged. Boom, boom, boom. Thousands of relics were shot out consecutively, dazzling everyone. Even Saber and Lancer, as well as the conqueror King Iskandar, were dumbfounded as they watched the scene unfold. All of them were filled with envy, jealousy, and hatred. Why do these two perverts have so many relics? Is God blind? It's not fair. The hero spirits were cursing in their hearts. It was infuriating to compare oneself to others. Damn it! Compared to Dustless, Gilgamesh was so angry that he was about to jump up. As the ancient king, the hero king, he was an extremely conceited person. Now that he had been humiliated by Dustless, he was infuriated. Bastard, since you want to die so much, I'll fulfill your wish. The blood-red eyeball shot out a violent aura. A huge light appeared on Gilgamesh's right hand. A strange-looking sword vaguely appeared. Oh no, Gilgamesh is infuriated. In the sealed secret chamber, Yenfeng Kali and Tashiomi Inaka saw the scene and were shocked. The two of them only hoped that Gilgamesh could test Dustless's strength. It would be best if he could force him to use his relic. Who would have thought that Gilgamesh would be the first to lose his cool? As the master, Tashiomi Inaka was naturally unwilling to be the first to release his relic. This idiot Gilgamesh is infuriated. It's impossible to persuade him to come back. Tashiomi Inaka looked at the Crimson Command incantation in his hand, and was frustrated. The only way was to activate the command spell to make Gilgamesh retreat. Otherwise, this idiot would definitely fight to the death with Dustless. Even if Gilgamesh took out his noble artifact, it might not be his doing. Staring at Dustless, Yenfeng Chili revealed a confused expression. He still hadn't figured out Dustless's background. What's the reason, Kiri? Tashiomi Inosaka asked calmly. This guy seems to have the same ability as Gilgamesh. If that's the case, the eighth hero spirit is too terrifying, Yen Fengili said in a low voice. Are you saying? Tashiomi's expression changed. He understood what Yen Fengili was trying to say. He said uncertainly, that shouldn't be possible. Gilgamesh's EA shouldn't be able to use the eighth hero spirit. To be honest, I think there's a need to re-evaluate the eighth hero's strength. Yen Fengili glanced at Tashiomi and Osaka when he heard this. Then he stared at the surveillance screen and analyzed. The eighth hero spirit seems to be more familiar with using the king's treasure than Gilgamesh. It's really hard to guess who the imposter is, Master. Who knows, it might be Gilgamesh imitating someone else. In short, let's get the Hero King to retreat. If this continues, I believe he will be defeated. Tashiomi and Osaka sighed in disappointment. He did not hesitate to activate the command spell to order Gilgamesh to retreat. Aya. Is the stray dog retreating? Dustless looked at Gilgamesh, who was suffused with a golden glow. He knew that Tashiomi and Osaka had ordered Golden Shimmer to retreat. If not, with the Hero King's personality, he would definitely fight to the death. Let's end it here. In the future, just you wait. I will definitely not let you off so easily. Gilgamesh warned fiercely. His flushed face finally recovered a little. On a closer look, Gilgamesh's body was black all over. His armor was covered in black smoke. The funniest thing was that Gilgamesh's hair had also disappeared. He had become a bona fide bald head, all thanks to Dustless. Darn Tashiomi and Osaka. You want to use a laughable title like, Your Majesty, to appease my anger? Do you think this king is a 3-year-old child? Hero King Gilgamesh was secretly enraged. He vented all his anger on Tashiomi and Osaka. He had appeared to establish his might. But who knew that he would become a stepping stone for Dustless to rise to fame? Then, what do you plan on doing? Conquest King. Gilgamesh fled in a sorry state, leaving behind Hero King Iskandar and his master, Wilbur Velvet. Seeing Dustless look at him, the punk's face was as white as a sheet of paper. Seriously, it looks like my plan of roping you in as my subordinates has failed. Conquest King Iskandar's coarse face revealed a look of regret. How could such an extraordinary expert lower his head to be his lackey? Farewell. By the way, I'm determined to obtain the Holy Grail. The Conquest King rode the divine might wheel and left. Dustless did not plan on pursuing him. This time, they were just getting to know each other. The next time they met, it would be a merciless fight to the death. After all, there was only one Holy Grail. He had to eliminate all them satyr and their heroic spirits. Why am I the only one left after all this fighting? Lancer, who was in an intense battle with Saber, cursed. He was certain that if Saber and Dustless joined forces, he would definitely be torn to pieces. Chapter 1683. Lancer wanted to cry but had no tears. In his heart, he cursed the Hero King Gilgamesh and the Conqueror King Iskandar who ran away. These two bastards were shameless. Seeing that the opponent was strong, they turned around and retreated. Was this what a hero would do? Especially to the Hero King Gilgamesh who was beaten up like a dog. There's a flaw. Boom boom boom. Saber seemed to have noticed the ripples in Lancer's heart. She held the sword with both hands and increased her strength by several levels. She launched a fierce and powerful attack, suppressing Lancer and making it difficult for him to fight back. Damn it! Lancer, who was being beaten back, cursed. He did not expect Saber to have such a sharp eye. Even in such a short moment, she realized that his heart was in a mess. Clang 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 clang. The loud roars continued, and the volcanoes created by the collision of the weapons kept flashing. Lancer was sweating profusely. A moment of mistake would cause him to be suppressed. Bang! The invisible sword coming at him was even more powerful. Saber became braver and braver as she fought. Her attack forced Lancer to retreat. His body even smashed into the wall, leaving a broken dent. Lancer's mouth was also bleeding. Saber, you're too despicable. Lancer, who was not convinced, showed an angry expression. He pointed at Dustless, who was standing, and shouted, "What's the point of fighting 2 against 1? 2 against 1? Dustless heard him and showed an amused expression. He despised him and said, "Is there something wrong with your eyes? When did I sneak attack you? And do you think you can survive 2 against 1? You." Lancer opened his mouth wide and realized that he was speechless. It made sense. Dustless did not intervene in the battle from the beginning to the end. He only watched the battle as if nothing had happened and did not intervene. "I'm not convinced." Lancer was too lazy to talk nonsense. It was good that Dustless did not intervene, but the psychological pressure he caused could not be ignored. When you were fighting with others, could you still concentrate with an enemy standing behind you? That's it for today. Your head will be taken by me in the future. Saber held the holy sword with both hands. Her gaze was like a torch that made people look at her differently. Aoao, aoao. At the same time, a raging roar suddenly came. The 3 of them were startled and rushed towards the source of the roar. Their gazes froze. Is this a berserker? Looking at the pitch-black monster, everyone frowned. That extremely oppressive aura was suffocating. Its aura was extremely evil, and it was as terrifying as a demonic hand that had walked out from hell. Saber, be careful. That guy is coming for you. Dustless stood in front of Saber and reminded her. Coming for me? Saber was stunned. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. There seemed to be no hatred between the heroic spirits. I can only see heroic spirits without hatred, but... Dustless's eyes glowed with wisdom. What if this guy is someone you once knew? Saber was confused by Berserker's words. She stared at the furious Berserker, as if she was trying to find someone who matched him in her memory. Aoao. King Arthur. Berserker finally let out a series of angry roars. It was very hoarse. His entire body was covered in armor. That voice came from within the armor. No one would doubt that he was a demon disguised as a human. Aoao. There was another series of inhuman roars. Then, Berserker suddenly broke the street lamp and dived towards Dustless and Saber. To be more precise, it was Saber. As for Dustless, he was completely ignored by this guy. Bang bang bang. Berserker's strength was extremely terrifying. Every step he took left a dent in the ground. He rushed in a straight line, leaving a dent in the ground. You're just a vicious dog. You're too arrogant. The demonic voice rang in Berserker's ears. This voice sounded harmless, but it made everyone's hair stand on end. Even the 2 masters who were hiding in the dark, Kenneth Elmeroy and Jiantong Yayan, felt a chill in their hearts. It was as if an invisible knife was placed on their necks. Woo-woo. Even Berserker's body stopped. He hummed twice, as if he was telling Dustless not to meddle in other people's business. Immortal spell. However, his protest was completely ignored by Dustless. He only glanced at him coldly. The chakra in his body surged wildly, and a special red halo appeared between his eyebrows. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. At the same time, there was an extremely coordinated movement from the depths of the void. Immortal spell, bright god gate. Groups of black dots, like a natural disaster, filled everyone's eyes in an instant. This exaggerated formation made people involuntarily think of a natural disaster. What is this? A piece of wood. Lancer looked up at the sky. After seeing what was falling, he immediately took the initiative to distance himself, avoiding close contact with this thing. He had a feeling that a disaster was about to befall him. Damn it, Berserker, this bastard, actually didn't listen to my orders. Who told him to provoke that big shot? Jiantong Yayan, who was hiding in the dark, cursed. He did not order Berserker to attack Saber and Dustless. Who knew that this guy would take the initiative to come out and cause trouble? Now he had angered the 8th heroic spirit. Chapter 1684. Jiantong Yayan regretted his decision. If he had known, he would not have brought Berserker, that idiot. It would have been fine if he had just pulled some aggro, but this time, he had pulled in 2 extremely powerful heroic spirits, Saber and Dustless. Jiantong Yayan had been watching the battle. He had seen Dustless and Saber's performance. Without any exaggeration, they could be considered the strongest heroic spirit duo. When they were alone, Their combat power was invincible. Now that they were in a powerful duo, their strength was on another level. This idiot really doesn't know anything. I wanted him to cause trouble for Toshimi Nagasaka, but this guy. Jiantong Yiyan wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Countless crows descended in his heart. He cursed Berserker's 18 generations of ancestors. This guy's ability to attract aggro was definitely top-notch. We have no chance of winning. Let's just retreat. Jiantong Yiyan glanced at the falling bright god gate. Jiantong Yiyan looked at it with lingering fear, and then he dragged his exhausted body and retreated. Jiantong Yiyan was not a scumbag. He was only able to become a master because of his father. Boom boom boom. The sky full of redwood fell. Berserker extended his speed to the limit, but the area covered by the bright god gate was too wide. There was no way to escape. He was instantly crushed. Boom 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 boom. Ka 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 ka. A sea of redwood fell on Berserker's body. His sturdy armor was all smashed, and his entire body was exposed to the air. This is a good chance. Saber's beautiful eyes flashed with passion. When she saw Berserker's armor crumble, she swung Excalibur in her hand. She was about to shatter the heavy armor on Berserker's face. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. However, good things did not last long. Just as the mask was about to shatter, Berserker's body suddenly turned into mist. He turned into a terrifying black shadow and slowly disappeared. Don't even think about escaping. Saber saw this and groaned. Just as she was about to chase, Dustless stopped her. It's useless, Saber. This guy's master ordered us to retreat. We can't catch him. Grabbing Saber's shoulder, Dustless smiled and said, and this guy's enemy isn't just us. The one who should be having a headache is Toshimi Inaka. You. Saber turned her head and looked straight into Dustless's eyes. Her beautiful face was filled with hesitation as she asked in confusion. Sometimes, I wonder if you are really a heroic spirit. That's not important. In short, I'm a heroic spirit and your ally. Dustless scratched his head and answered nonchalantly. His actions and the knowledge he had accumulated far surpassed that of the so-called heroic spirits. Let's retreat, Alice. Phil is scared to death. Looking at the dazed Alice Phil not far away, Dustless slowly walked over. She was quite shocked by the bright god gate that filled the entire street. In terms of scale, it was simply too shocking. At this moment, in another direction, such a large-scale attack, this should be his true treasured artifact. Toshimi Inaka and Yenfeng Kaylee were in a daze as they observed the red forest through a special camera. The boundless numbers made their hands cramp as they were unable to determine the exact number. In a flash, it was the next morning. Yesterday's battle had left a shadow in the hearts of many heroic spirits and Msader, especially Hero King Gilgamesh. He did not sleep the entire night as his mind was filled with Dustless's arrogant figure. There was nothing he could do about it. His domineering face had Dustless's footprints on it. It could only be said that it was an unlucky year. In the castle of the Einsbaron family in Dongmu City, Takemiya Kissy and Takeo Kuyu had also rushed back from the distant Pacific Ocean. The former's face was filled with fatigue, and his eyes were empty. In the vast Pacific Ocean, Takemiya Kissy had been chased by groups of sharks for several hours. Not bad, your performance was very good. In Takemiya Kissy's bedroom, after hearing about yesterday's battle, his listless and dispirited spirit was finally lifted. He revealed a rare smile, but it looked forced. It's just a pity that we didn't get rid of one of them. If Kissy was around, he would definitely be able to assassinate the enemy's master instead of flaunting his prowess and offending all the heroic spirits. Takeo Kuyu stared coldly at Dustless. She did not hide her dissatisfaction. This bastard had left her lover in the sea to be chased by sharks. Takemiya Kissy had been cheated badly. Msader, forgive me for speaking bluntly, but Dustless is not wrong. There is no need for us to assassinate the enemy in such a despicable manner. With Dustless's and my abilities, we can completely wipe out the enemy's servant. It did not matter if Dustless was silent, but Sebra immediately stood up to argue. She believed in the spirit of chivalry and scoffed at Takemiya Kissy's despicable methods. She despised them and even looked down on them. Saber is quite righteous. He stared at the righteous saber with interest. He did not expect her to defend him like this. As for Takeo Koyu, Dustless glanced at her and laughed disdainfully in his heart. When I bring Alice and Phil to catch the adulterers, I hope you can still cooperate with each other like this. Boom boom boom. At the same time, a violent tremor resounded through the sky. A low and dirty sound suddenly resounded through the entire castle of the Einsbaron family. You're tuning in to the Echoes of the Heart YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.